Far from us.
What?
Oh, she can't hear us.
Oh, you're kidding. Oh, that'll be good.
She can see us.
Shouldn't let your phones in. Try and get it all.
But can the public see us or no?
No, they can see.
So you can see the big. See the other camera.
All right, President Jackson, we are ready. We might have some hiccups, but we're gonna do our best.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to bring the meeting of March 14th, 2022 back to open session. I want to start out by noting that today is the day in Marin we can take our masks off. It's optional, but I do realize that our teachers have been working with masks for years and dealing with what we dealt with in a board meeting where it's very hard to communicate. But we decided to go to Zoom so that the public could understand what we were saying. We're women, our voices don't carry as well. And when we want to be sure that the public knows what's happening in their business. So with that, I also want to ask for everybody's grace and patience with those who do wear masks. We don't know the story. We don't know, there's protections that people wear masks for the people that they care about and for the people around them. So in our school district, you use the word grace. I was Superintendent Ogabon about this, and so we carry each other with grace and patience on this. And speaking of patience, this is our first live meeting with our new camera system here in our boardroom. We have linked up to YouTube and Zoom and live. So be patient as we work out the logistics, and if there's any challenges, just let us know and we'll make it better next time. We're going to have our first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. We have not done this for a long time because it didn't work on Zoom very well. But with that, I want to invite our newest board member, Catalina Martin, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So please, everybody stand.
Is everyone ready? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. Announcement of reportable closed session action. We have one item on closed session to appoint Alex Peck as principal for Coleman Elementary School. Motion by Vice President Lucia Martel Dow and seconded by Trustee Daly, and it was a unanimous vote. So I'd like to ask our superintendent to introduce Alex.
Thank you, President Jackson. So super excited to announce that Alex will be the new principal at Coleman. A little bit of history on Alex. He went to Albany High School, then he was a gaucho down at UCSB where he majored in history. A lot of elementary teaching experience. He started in West Contra Costa for 3 years, teaching 4th grade. Then he moved over to San Francisco Unified for a couple years, and then came to San Pedro and was there for 3 years teaching 5th grade and kindergarten. Is that right? 5th grade. 5th grade. Thank you. Just checking to make sure you're paying attention. So we're super excited to have Alex. So he's had elementary experience, and then he applied for and was given the job of assistant principal at Santa Fe High School. And then when Glenn Dennis was out on leave, he was the interim principal this year. So he's only had 2 years of administrative experience. Done an amazing job. Had a lot of challenges in his first couple of years. Lockdowns, we had a student death, we've had we had COVID, so he's really come through with flying colors. He's got an incredible commitment to social justice and to equity. He's worked in very diverse schools and school systems. At Santa Fe, he's very well respected by teachers, staff, and students. The parents there are very sad that he's not going to be there at Santa Fe High School. He did a great job of working with restorative justice there. He helped with peer court, really a big, strong proponent of student voice, which is a big deal for us. Worked with SLAM, Students Leadership Anti-Racist Movement, knows a lot about EL strategies and works a lot with our EL learners. One of the things I think that the interview team was super impressed is that Alex has made it a point to do home visits in his job that he's had, which is something that very few people do and can have an incredible impact. So again, supportive ELAC, he helped get the teacher pathway going and really worked hard to promote advisory at Santa Fe High School. At San Pedro, he was instrumental in getting a boys' council going. So a lot of you have read the book Boy Crisis, and a lot of our boys, I think, are in jeopardy. And so he was able to get 50 students together for that. Knows a lot about project-based learning, Readers and Writers Workshop, and SEAL and GLAD strategies. So he has just the experience that we need for elementary. In addition to that, he's just a great listener. He's very collaborative, works well with other people. He's an amazing integrity. He's somebody that you trust implicitly. He's got a super strong work ethic. Like I said, a very strong equity lens, follows through organization, a good manager, just a warm, friendly, and all-around great guy. Loves to surf. Lives in Santa Fe with his wife and young daughter. 2 now, that's right. So he's going to be adding to our pool of students. So we like that as well in Santa Fe. So we can get our enrollment going up there. So Alex, I think you've done just an amazing job in everything that we've asked. You've overcome a lot of difficulties and you've shown a lot of resilience and heart. So if you want to come up and say a few words, it'd be great to have you.
Thanks for having me up, President Jackson. Thank you, Superintendent Hogaboom, and trustees. I really appreciate this opportunity. I'm thrilled to become a Coleman Tiger. I feel like it's really a homecoming for me, where not only my daughter will hopefully be able to attend Coleman, but I'll also have be able to come back to my instructional roots and really support teachers. I'm really excited to lean in and to get to know the teaching staff, which I know is extremely strong, as well as the community at Coleman. I look forward to meeting the parents, the students, and I'm just very thankful for this opportunity.
Well, thank you. Stay there because we'll have a few words here for you. So let's start. I don't know who would like to go first to say welcome him, but Marina, why don't you kick us off on a welcome?
Alex, it is a privilege for us to have you as one of our new principals. I know that parents from San Rafael High School will miss you dearly. You've done so much for the high school, and I'm sending this message to the Coleman parents that they have a great, great principal coming. Thank you so much.
Gina.
Well, Alex, congratulations. You had some really big shoes to fill when you took over for Glenn Dennis at San Rafael High School, but you really showed your grit and your determination and most of all, your empathy. And I think that's really important, especially at the elementary school level, to have an empathetic leader. And I love that you have a little one that's going to be going through the schools too. I think it's a wonderful way of really understanding the path that our young people are on. So congratulations. And go Tigers.
Yeah.
Alex, congratulations. I loved it when I heard you've done home visits. I did that when I taught. So congratulations. And I'm just like so excited for the Coleman community. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not much to add to what my colleagues have said, but I know that you have done an incredible job at San Rafael, and you have shown leadership in very complicated times, especially during COVID and when Dennis had to take a leave, Principal Dennis. So we are all in gratitude, and we hope that we'll see you soon, maybe making a presentation to the board on how things are going in Coleman. So we can wait for that. Congratulations.
And thank you. I remember visiting your classroom at San Pedro School for a few years when you were there and talking with you. You were settling in at San Rafael High School, and what everybody says, we are just so looking forward to visiting you at Coleman. So round of applause. Thank you so much, and we'll see you around Coleman.
See you soon.
Okay. All right. The next item on the agenda is to move forward with our business. I do want to note that, it's 2 years and a day since we got the word that we had to stop meeting in person. We had to be wearing masks and sheltering at home back in that. So here we are. Who would have known? I asked my husband if we had been told that it was going to be 2 years. I don't know what we would have done at that time. I did want to ask our student trustees if they had anything to say to Alex, but he's already left the room, so I'm so sorry. But we will let him know that you had good words. Okay. I do want to note also, I can't let this go, but we are watching the tragedy in Ukraine. And I think of the families who come to our school district and how we welcome them to come. There's a poem by Warson Shire called Home, and no one leaves home unless home is the mouth of a shark. And that's what we're watching on TV. And there are 1,500 Ukrainians who live in Marin County, and we stand ready to welcome those immigrants in as well when the time comes. So we need to get on with our business. I need a motion on approval of the agenda, please.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, moved by trustee Daly, seconded by Vice President Martel Dow. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. And now we are going to have a presentation from Venetia Valley School with Principal Apolinar Quesada. I don't know, Superintendent, if you have something words you'd like to.
I would. So super happy that Mr. Quesada joined our district. He'd worked in Arizona, also worked in San Francisco. He's an experienced administrator, super good manager. Well, the other thing I love about him is his visibility out there in front of school. He's meeting the kids and the parents and everybody before and after school. He knows all of their names. A really strong rapport, personal person. And we're just super happy to have his expertise in our district. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you. Well, good evening. Buenas tardes a todos. Para los que nos acompañan por internet. It's a pleasure to be here this evening with you all. So, Madam President, Board Trustees, Superintendent Hogeboom, and our guests. I'd like to introduce myself, so we go to the next one there. My name is Apolinar Quesada. I'm the proud principal at Venetia Valley School. I wanted to share just a little information about who I am. I am in my 19th year as an educator. This is my 12th year as an administrator and my 2nd year at Venetia Valley. So a little interesting there. What I chose to do is connect my presentation with Together 2024. I think that's important in highlighting how Venetia Valley is bringing equity, community, and joy, which are district values under that plan, to light so that you see the progress that we're making. And some of the things you see in the picture, just how we're involving everyone there. We think that's important, everything from professional development to address some of the systemic barriers that impact our students, impact our families. It's important for us to learn and grow, to inviting our community members to come and be a part of the school, and us also having a little fun, whether it's dressing up for Halloween or celebrating National Hispanic Heritage Month, or even engaging with our little scientists in the 2nd grade classroom. So thank you again for having me this evening. Our vision statement at Venetia Valley, again, connecting it with Together 2024, is that we do believe we're a community school where we accept our students and our families and celebrate them for who they are and support them in all that they aspire to be. Next slide, please. Who are the students at Venetia Valley? Here we are. We have a total of 677 students enrolled in TK through 8th grade. And you see the breakdown there where 449 are in elementary and 228 are in middle grades, which is 6th through 8th. You can see that the largest makeup of our school population is the Latino community, over 80% in both grades, 85 in one, 89 in the other. And then we have a little mixture of everyone else that makes our diverse community a very rich one. Next slide, please. We do have our subgroups, broken down. As you can see in our elementary grades, almost 70% of our kids are identified as English learners, while in our middle grades, it's almost 40%. Of that, we have 13% newcomers, 7% in the middle grades, and then we also have about a 13 to 13.5 overall percentage rate of special education students, where Venetia Valley houses the special day classes for San Rafael City Schools. Over 80% of our students in both are considered socioeconomically disadvantaged, and about 20% of our families are identified as homeless or living in a multiple home setting. Next slide, please. I do want to share a little bit about our goals. We can go here. As you've probably been hearing from my fellow colleagues in the elementary district, again, tying it to our strategic goals, we want to make sure that we are implementing our multi-tier systems of support, supporting ELs, and also identifying culturally relevant teaching practices. We think that that's important, and I'm going to dive in a little deeper as to what those are at Venetia Valley in the next few slides. So next slide, please. Under our MTSS goal, multi-tier systems of support, we've been focusing specifically on restorative practices and also positive behavior intervention systems. So as we continue to construct our district multi-tier systems of support for students district-wide, at Venetia Valley, we have begun the important work by creating our positive behavior intervention strategies, such as our Falcon expectations, as you see depicted here, being safe, being respectful, being responsible, and being an ally, and then what those behaviors look like underneath each category. Coupled with the implementation of restorative practices from TK through 8th grade, our middle grades have received an additional year of training, so they're about a year ahead from our elementary folks. And a big shout out to our folks over at Youth and Justice with Mr. Don Carney and his team that have been doing a lot of this work, guiding our teachers, guiding our staff in community circles, restorative practice circles, where we're trying to get away from the punitive consequences for issues. Next slide, please. For our EL reclassification, one of the biggest things that we're using, also in line with most of our elementary schools, is the use of SEAL structures or SEAL strategies, and that is the Sobrato Early Academic Language Strategies, where we've been fortunate at Venetia Valley to have these structures in place for quite some time, where our teachers have moved from a compliance piece of using these strategies to where they are now committed to implementing these, and we see them daily, we see them happening with fidelity, and that is what's happening with our students, and where you see that drastic change when we talked about the demographics, where we see almost 70% of our kids are EL in elementary, but then that reclassification that happens in middle grades, this is the hard work of these dedicated professionals in our elementary school that are doing that work. So we want to thank them for that as well. Some of our things that our middle grade folks are doing is we've created a time for them to collaborate bi-weekly with their fellow colleagues where they can identify specific English language development standards to then bridge them with their Common Core standards so that when a student who's going from one class, whether it's math to social studies to PE, they are focusing on one specific ELD standard throughout the entire day. And then we do that every 2 weeks where we progress monitor, check the progress, do we need to reteach? If not, then we can move on to the next one. And that's something that's been working for us very well this semester at Venetia Valley. Next slide, please. Our culturally relevant teaching practices, this is something that's been ongoing and will continue to happen at Venetia Valley. We decided to use one of the books on how to be an anti-racist teacher. Coupled that with the roadmap, the California English Learner Roadmap, which really serves as a guide and a checklist. Simple little things that sometimes we don't even focus on or don't even recognize that they're there. What we call those unconscious biases, right, are important for us to then check. Are the seats in the classroom all facing in one direction to where I'm promoting silence? Or do I have them set up in a way where the students are able to collaborate with each other, where they engage in rich discussions, where language is heard? That's what we want to see, and that's one of the pieces or the indicators on there. You saw the signage earlier, just even our Falcon expectations. We're respectful of the languages that are represented at Venetia Valley, so we have signage in both languages so that it's in English and Spanish, also showing and sharing with our families that we value the strengths they bring to the school community, and we continue to embrace that moving forward. Next slide, please. I'd like to share with you just a couple of things that are positive things happening at Venetia Valley that we consider as being Falcon proud. So some of the things that we have here are social emotional supports. So in collaboration with our counseling team, we are very fortunate to have 2 full-time counselors on staff where they're holding weekly social emotional support programs. They're also using the second step curriculum in the classrooms with the teachers. As you notice by some of the pictures here, we held our coping skills week where the counselors set up tables outside. The kids get to come during their recess time and engage in the various different activities. What they learn from there, then they take, as you see on the other picture where the little kiddo there is doing her meditation. Very, very important for that. We also use our therapy dog, O'Shea, who has his own, or her own, ID as well. But she's currently out on maternity leave, so she'll be back in a couple of weeks. She has 7 new puppies, all of which will also be service animals. So it's super amazing to have her. And she works primarily in our special day classrooms where she provides a much more tranquil, much more calming environment, especially for some of our neediest students that really need that. Next slide, please. Involving our families, this is something that is very important to us. And thanks to our P3 Early Success Grant through the Marin Community Foundation and also MCOE, our family center is able to highly involve families and connect them with the school. During the time of COVID restrictions, of course, we were a little limited on some of the things that we could do, but with some creative thinking with our family center director, Michela Ramirez there, they came up with different activities to do outdoors. So our school was hosting monthly hiking activities, walk across the Golden Gate Bridge, you name it, a bunch of different things that we were able to still involve our families outdoors. And we're just super excited to bring them back. Our open house will be held at the end of this month on March 31st, where we're holding it more of a community event. We'll have food, we'll have music, and then probably after about 45 minutes or an hour, our families will be able to transition to the classroom where they'll engage in some gallery walks, where they'll get to see the work that their children have done throughout the year up to this day. So we're super excited about that, and we invite everybody to be a part of that too. So please join us. Next slide, please. Receiving feedback is something that's important for us. We have to provide that safe space so that people can actually do that. The most recent one was our Youth Truth Survey that we used. There's a lot of data within the Youth Truth Survey, and we've been fortunate enough to disseminate that information with our school site council through our principal chat meetings that I hold monthly. And our next step is now to involve our student council so that they can then disaggregate that data some more. And then we will work with our teams, our leadership team, instructional leadership team, to disseminate that information with our teachers to also disaggregate that information and find the meaningful information that we need to really enact the change that everyone's asking for. Overall, it was nice to see that a lot of the things that we had put as goals to focus on, we saw an increase. And so one of our biggest pieces was ensuring that we were creating a safe space for folks, that the school community was a safe environment, that we were building relationships, that people felt that they were welcome. And those, when we see the line just going up, we're really proud of that work because we focused so much on doing that. We wanted to be intentional, especially during a time where we were so limited in having interactions with people during the COVID restrictions. So we're happy for that. Our Venetia Valley Superintendent Student Advisory Council, I'm not sure that that's Superintendent Hogaboom's official name. I just kind of stole it, put it on there. But George Pagallo comes in monthly as well and works with our students. We provide them lunch. They have a great group of students that are different from our student council group that get to share everything from our girls' bathroom needs a mirror to, things like, why is the homework so long, right? We want to make sure that we get that feedback and implement what's important for our kids. Next slide, please. I think at the end of it all, teamwork is important. We can't be the amazing little school that we are without teamwork. And I think it's important that we give credit to our partners, for example, CSEA, SRTA, and even our PTA. Those 3 groups are probably the most significant groups that we work with in ensuring that we have a great environment at Venetia Valley. All of us working together in sync, then we're able to bring everyone else that you see depicted there. And I am very sure I'm going to offend someone because I did could not find their logo. I'm looking at Sophia here, and I know that Sophia's team also provides tutoring services for our kids. And that's something that I already saw her, and I'm like, darn, I didn't put something about that up there. But there's just so much happening that we're very proud of. And again, the work that we do as a team helps us to really get there and provide what we do. The last thing that I have for you all is I'd just like to give you a quick little update. So next slide. And that's just on our two-way dual language Spanish immersion program. We're super excited about that. We know enrollment closes tomorrow for the district. And then shortly, within a couple of weeks, we should be able to start making announcements as to who's going to be accepted onto the program. And so we're super excited about that. So far, as of March 8th, we had almost 70 people submit a request that they're interested in the program. And so that really is amazing for us. So we're super excited for that. And then we also have about 92 families just requesting kindergarten at Venetia Valley. So super excited about that. And as soon as we have more information, we will obviously share that with you. So with that, that's my presentation. Venetia Valley, follow me on Twitter at Principal Paul Q for all the details. I love to share on there and tag folks. So by all means, please do. I'm available for questions.
Okay, thank you so much. We'll see if there's any questions here from our trustees. Marina, and then I'll let you. Yeah.
Muy buenas tardes, señor Quesada. I'm really pleased with what I see going on at your school. I know that when you first started, when you were first hired, you did mention that at the previous school where you were teaching, you were already implementing the two-way language program. And then we all talked about, oh, that's something that, we have in the 2024, I believe. And I'm glad that this is gonna take place at your school. I'm very excited about what you do with the kids regarding the emotional health that is really important for them. And just would like to know what do they do in the after-school programs?
That's a great question. So we do partner with BACR and we do have our LEAP after-school program. And it is currently servicing a couple of TK kids, not too many. We have about 4 of them. And that's because they have older brothers and sisters in the program. But it goes all the way through middle school, which last year, the program only served 2nd through 5th grade. And this year, we were very intentional of serving all of our students, which sets us up for our new program that's coming in servicing everybody, TK through 8th. So we're excited about that. The middle school started with some difficulty. We had our staff who was ideally used to dealing with the elementary kids, and trying to implement those strategies with middle school grades was very challenging, to say the least. But what was great was the support that was provided by BACR. They got to visit Davidson, they got to visit some other schools in Marin County, and now kids are engaged in cooking classes and different activities where it's more hands-on. And we see a night and day difference in regards to their participation. Even the staff looks happy, which is great, right? We got to keep them happy. So there is programming happening. Unfortunately, we are always limited because we have much more requests than the seats that we have allotted. And we're currently recruiting for 2 new staff members to increase some of the sizes. And so far, I understand that 1 is about to be onboarded, but we're still looking for the 2nd.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you,
Congratulations.
Trustee Palma. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for asking the question about aftercare, because that's something that we hear so much from parents. So hopefully we can have those roles filled so that we can offer more support to parents and students. So I had a question about I'm really pleased to see that there is a channel of communication for the students and how that's, being complemented to the type of stuff that you're doing. So when you hear from the students, you act on some of the things that are being presented to you. So I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about some of the suggestions you have received from students and what kind of things you have implemented that they have suggested, if you have any examples.
Absolutely. I just met with our team called Club Life, which is really our gay straight alliance or LGBTQ plus team. And they presented items such as, can we do something as simple as ensuring that all our teachers and staff, yourself included, Mr. Q, on your emails, can you include your pronouns? We think that that would be a huge step just in getting us in the right direction. And can we identify a multi-gender restroom so that there is no gender attached to it? So those are some examples that we've put out and we've asked folks to do it. I almost forgot, I did that earlier today. It kind of reminded me as I'm presenting here. And so this morning I was sure to add my pronouns to my email signature line. But those are just some of the minor examples of what we do. Some more larger projects, so to speak, require folks like Dr. Dan Zeik back over here. The renovation of our middle grades bathrooms is something that we definitely and desperately need, which he knows, and I know that it's something on his list. And he's been very supportive in working with us on that. And then, of course, with the new track and field that's coming on, the athletic field, all also input from our students on how we could go, where Dr. Zeik was able to literally come up with a beautiful plan. And that is now fenced off, ready to break ground. So we're excited.
Thank you. The school looks great. Remember that we did a site visit and already congratulated everyone and the team who actually made the site look so nice. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Vice President Martelda.
Well, thank you so much for coming this evening and sharing what's happening at Venetia Valley. And it's exciting to have you be the first principal to be here live in person at our
Yes, and maskless. I'm excited. Thank you.
So we're so
Thank you,
glad you were
President
here.
Jackson and everybody. Good night.
We'll
Thank
see you around town. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it's hard to see.
I'll keep it for my announcements. No, it's all
Okay,
good. It's all
it'll
good.
come in the announcements. Good night.
Oh, that you were reading the book. I saw you on Instagram.
Okay, sorry. Thank you.
I know it's hard to see, right?
Yeah, no, I can't see. Okay, so our next item on the agenda is the wellness story video by the Terra Linda High School Wellness and Student Advisory Committee. So that would be our trustee from Terra Linda High School leading this, or?
I think Jason.
Or-
It's gonna be me.
Ah.
Good evening, everybody. Up on your screen, you all look great on this video, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much.
So I am honored and proud to present this video to you all. Our wellness centers at both high schools have been doing a ton of work, which is not done, but we're really excited about the progress made. And so in advance of the big official opening on March 30th, the Terra Linda High School wellness team with Nicole Jansen created this video. And I thought it was super cool, and I wanted to make sure you all had a chance to see it. And really it highlights not only just the wellness program, but it really shows that students can make referrals for themselves, for their friends, and staff can make referrals as well. So it's really showing that the doors are open, wellness is happening, and so feel free to come on in and refer a friend. So enjoy the video.
homework is going to be due on Friday.
I am.
Yo soy.
I am.
I am. Yo soy.
We are.
We are.
I definitely am.
All right, okay, everybody. Tell us a little bit about how that was made, please.
I wish I knew. I just got to present it to you all. I cannot take any credit for making that. So Nicole Jansen and the wellness team really, right on cue, really deserve all the credit for making it happen.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Sophia, what's
Thank you all.
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
please,
Sophia,
yes.
So
right
the way
now.
we sort of made is that we first started out by like making a script for what we kind of wanted to include. And then we got like a bunch of like actors to incorporate in the actual making of the video. But I think the main thing we wanted to kind of do is bring awareness about the Wellness Center because a lot of students don't even know the resources that are available there and how to even refer a friend or self-refer or how the process works. So I think a lot of it is just about like education awareness that the Wellness Center is on campus. And this is only the beginning, obviously, after the grand opening on March 30th, I believe it is. More students as well as parents and teachers will know about the amazing resources that the Wellness Center has to offer. But yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to? Yes, please, I know.
I'm just blown away by it. I thought it was so creative, but it also really showed, it really highlighted what would be offered. And also, I thought it was really realistic about the stresses that students are facing, that you can feel very isolated, it can be about homework, it can just, it can be really challenging to be a young person today. But I appreciated that it was done in a very creative way, and so it really captured people's attention, and I think it's really gonna reach out to a lot of people. So they're gonna remember, oh, I can refer myself, a teacher can refer me, or I can refer a friend. Like, that's the takeaway, and you guys made it look great, so thank you.
Nice job.
And the goal is to have those QR codes all over school. So it's as simple as pointing your phone at your camera at the QR code and you can fill out a form. So we want to take down barriers to mental health. And so we're trying to make it as easy on people as we can. So I think that's
I think it's great. And I do hope that many students reach out and get the help that they need. I really do. Thank you. I only like the end of it because the beginning was too sad for me.
I thought the tone was
it's the
great,
truth. It
serious,
was
but
great.
And we are having the official opening March 30th at Terra Linda High School from 4 to 6. So please stop by, come check out the presentations and the official ribbon cutting. Even though the Wellness Center is up and running, that is the official start. So we hope to see you all out there.
Jason, to be clear, you broke out a little bit. It's from 4 to 6, correct?
Correct, March 30th.
March 30th. So thank you. We'll all be there. And thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's stunning and award-winning, and we look forward to seeing it and our students seeing it. So
Excellent. Good
thank you
job.
so much for that.
Thank you, Jason.
And Sophia and your whole
And
team.
Sophia.
Oh, yeah.
On that.
No, Jason. Jason, there's no credit. This is a student.
Nicole has been an amazing leader on campus. Like truly, all students just love her.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to take we're going into our announcement part of our agenda. We have a lot of people to make announcements. Please keep it to about a minute. And we'll start with, and of course, we submit our information to Marina Parada, who makes sure it all gets in the minutes so that you don't have to read off everything. But we'll start off. Who would like to go first? Trustee Daly, please go.
Sorry. Okay, I'm gonna keep this brief. So what I was gonna say to Principal Q when he was here was that I had the great pleasure of visiting Miss Padilla's class at Venetia Valley to read Dragons Love Tacos, which is one of my kids' favorite books,
Yeah.
and turned out to be a favorite of the kindergarten class as well. But what was so clear when I visited that class was the joy in that classroom. I mean, these kids literally came up and hugged me before I started reading, several times during reading, and then afterwards they all came up to me. And I just left with the biggest smile on my face. They were the sweetest kids and really learning a lot of good stuff. I saw the same things I saw in the classroom are the things that I get home from my kindergarten student. So it's nice to see, we're all on the same page. So that was on Venetia Valley. I also attended the JLAC meeting, the Joint Legislative Action Committee meeting. We had a lot of good updates from what's happening in Sacramento. One issue I really want to flag for people, and I know this is something Bob Marcucci and Marie Jaramillo are looking at as well. As most of you know, our elementary school district is funded on ADA, that's average daily attendance, instead of being a basic aid district, which is our high school district. We have been held harmless for several years because of COVID. So our enrollment is lower than it has historically been. And so Sacramento is trying to figure out what is the fix that we can do to try to smooth the way in the future. And there really seem to be two options, at least so far, that are being presented. The first is in Governor Newsom's proposal, it's known as the ADA soft landing, which is basically it would allow districts to decide either to use a prior year, the current year, or a 3-year average for their ADA. So they get to pick whatever is the best of those three to try to have a softer landing. And then the other fix, which is a bill that's by Senator Portantino, would be to move to an enrollment-based system. And in theory, that would be good for us because our enrollment tends to be a little higher than our ADA. That's true of many large school districts and especially school districts that tend to have a more diverse student population. LA Unified comes to mind. The problem with that will be when we take that enrollment number and making sure that we are not duplicating efforts in terms of what our administration already has to report. So we're going to be looking at that real closely to make sure that it's already information we're gathering and that it actually makes sense for our student body. So just wanted to flag that issue. It's still an ongoing issue, but something we're looking at closely, and I've been working with Marie and Bob to try to figure that out. That's it for me.
Okay, who?
I'm happy
Go next,
Yes.
okay, Trustee Martin.
Yes, thank you. I want to thank everyone for being so welcoming. I have met with Jim and Morena and also with Lucia and pretty much everyone. We're still gonna get our coffee, but I want to thank everyone for being so welcoming and such an honor to be here. So.
Perfect.
I don't have anything to report this time.
Okay.
Just happy to be here in person.
So the two meetings that I attended this week, one of them was a DLAC meeting, and one of the highlights about the meeting was that we presented, Cecilia Perez presented the results of the Youth Truth survey, and she presented it in Spanish for the parents to hear what the results were, and also share information on who were the respondents and the demographics of the people that were respondents to the survey. So I really appreciate how she made such a big effort to put so many complex questions and responses to in a way that parents could follow in a summarized way. One of the things that stood out from that meeting is that actually parents, when we talked about the culture, especially elementary school parents, were worried and they were bringing up issues around bullying. And they were particularly worried about it. So I don't know if it was just something in particular that came up because we were talking about some of the things around relationship with students and the culture that we wanted to create. And there was a conversation that parents did express some concerns about this. And I know that the schools overall are doing an excellent job of trying to support students. And of course, no tolerance for bullying in our schools. But I just wanted to highlight because it is something that it definitely came up repeatedly during the DLAC meeting. So thank you for the staff and everybody from the DLAC folks and Pepe Rodriguez also for being such a great facilitator for those meetings. And the other meeting that I attended was for the bond measure that there's gonna be in our ballot that we approved to be in the ballot last year. This last meeting, we approved it to be in the ballot in June. So we are really excited about that. We have a group of very good volunteers and some of the district staff who will participate. And we are now trying to get some folks from the community to support the bond measure and be our allies to ensure that we have sufficient funding to keep making the improvements and continue supporting the infrastructure of our school.
Okay, thank you. So I have just 3 meetings I want to report on. One is attending a meeting about the teacher housing crisis in Marin County. So that was with Bob Marcucci, and you and I attended this meeting hosted by Marin Promise. Another one is the San Rafael City Schools Community Partners Meeting. Just want to note that Canal Alliance discussed how they didn't really have they have a good program for middle school, but not for high school students, and wanting their students to be active and involved this summer. And by the end of the meeting, I think everybody had a job because everybody else was sharing what kind of positions they had open for Canal Alliance high schools to apply for. One of them is Don Carney's program. They have paid high school and middle school internships. So hopefully our high school and middle school schools can look into that for students it's a peer diversion program. So training and students can participate in this. And I think overall, we're looking for, students from our district to participate. They typically have very good attendance from TAM High School. So I'll put out, or TAM High School district. So I'll just put it out for our schools to participate in that. And the last one is attending a couple of meetings at Marin County Office of Education, the Efficiency and Effectiveness Committee, which I encourage all of you to look at and consider going to because it's very interesting to work at the countywide level and then sitting in on the same JLAC meeting that Gina went to. A lot of bills to watch there. Superintendent Holcomb.
Thank you. Well, just one thing to report. Last Wednesday, Principal Dennis announced to his staff at Centerville High School that he will be resigning due to health issues. He's doing a lot better since his transplant, but he did get COVID in the hospital, but he's kind of overcome that. So he's continuing to improve. He'll be working at the district office with Tyler Graff and our secondary programs to support them in whatever way they can as principal on special assignment or something like that. So it was a pretty emotional meeting with staff, and our hearts go out to him and we wish him the best, but we're looking forward to having his support here at the district office next year. So we will be working, we're publicizing the job, I think, tomorrow for probably till after spring break. Hope to get some really good candidates, but with Alex Peck leaving to go to Coleman, we'll need a new principal and we'll need a new assistant principal at Santa Fe High. So we will involve the community in a lot of different ways and do a lot of outreach and networking to try to target people. We are looking for a principal who's bilingual, bicultural. It's really important at Santa Fe High School. So I just went to a Principal's Leadership Institute interviews on Saturday over in Berkeley. So there's some good candidates there. So we think we'll be able to get some good people.
Thank you so much. And our student trustees.
Holly, you wanna go first or should I?
I'm fine with either.
Okay, you wanna go?
Okay, trustee Harder.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. So ASB has our elections this week. And it's a great way for students to both engage in our school government and also gain skills and civic action. So we're excited about that. We're also having our spring fling dance on March 26th. It's the Saturday after SBAC testing, so students are really excited to have a little bit of a celebration for finishing that. Our counselors at home are course verification requests. And as always, they have worked just so hard to make sure that students have schedules that not only put them on the path of graduation, but also challenge and engage them. We are very excited for the Wellness Center opening on March 30th. Our Wellness Center that we've been building is not yet open and finalized, but it is super important that students know where our temporary space is and that services are available, because that communication issue is still prevalent, and it's just really key to keep students informed about what's going on and what services are offered. And then we're also very excited about the parent education event at that time. And then students and teachers are very excited to work on our homework policy when that meeting happens. And I just really quickly, I wanted to add a little bit to Linda's comments on the Youth Transforming Justice internship. I've worked with that nonprofit for quite some time, and this program is so incredible. They're really working to raise the voices of youth who are involved in our program and make sure that we have leadership specifically from our Latinx community. And I just can't recommend it enough for any student in our district. It has impacted my life in so many different ways, and this program is even more amazing than anything I've been able to participate in. And so I just really highly recommend, if you have any students, to encourage them to join this program. And then finally, we will dearly, dearly miss Mr. Dennis and Mr. Peck next year. And we wish them both the best in their new positions as we hear the news of their transition. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So we have two more trustees. Alex Cruz, would you like to report from Madrone?
Hi, everyone. We've been really good at Madrone. I'm working with my principal right now to get some new electives because we don't have a whole lot at Madrone. So we're working right now to get some new electives. Yeah. That's it for me.
Pretty good.
Keep our superintendent appraised. You meet with him, so let him know how that's going. Okay, and now I have trustee from Terralinda, Sophia Weinstein.
Hi, everyone. I firstly just want to introduce Tess Waddy. She's the sophomore at TL on my left, and this is Liam on my right. So Liam is going to be my replacement for next year as a student board rep, and Tess is going to be the alternate. Liam, he is a sophomore and he's an ASB, and Tess is in the Marin program. You guys can introduce yourself if you want a little bit more. You want to?
Sure, yeah. Sophia talked to me a little bit about the position. I'm passionate about education and making sure that everyone is enjoying learning and enjoying their classes and making the most out of this opportunity which we have to be taught by all of these professionals and learn as much as we can. So when Sophia talked to me about it, I was just really interested in it, and I'm excited to be here.
I learned about the position pretty recently. It came to interest very fast though. I had a lot of, wanting to do it and just, gain the student voice out there, especially on the board, and making sure students are heard and, changes that need to happen, I can help get out there, and I'm really passionate about that.
Yeah. So something to look forward to for the next coming years. There will be an upcoming WASC visit on Monday the 21st from 9 to 1, as I'm sure you know. So I'll be part of the presentation as well as Ms. Inman. And creating a space for teachers to learn, grow, and collaborate is essential to form a safe, collaborative, inclusive environment for students to thrive. So in order to begin for professional development, there will be a survey given out to teachers to kind of get some input from them about what they want to see at those professional development presentations and what kind of format they would like it in. Third quarter grades are due tomorrow, the 15th, and LPAC testing will begin also tomorrow and continue through the 21st. TL has also secured the Sheraton's Hotel Ballroom for AP testing, which will begin in May for the larger AP exams, such as AP US History, AP English Language. And for those who are unfamiliar, the State Seal of Biliteracy Program recognizes high school graduates for proficiency in another language besides English. And so applications are due by Friday, April 1st. So that's something that a lot of TL seniors usually apply for. In addition, the Career Technical Education Fair will be held on March 23rd from 10 to 3 in the quad. And And also very exciting, on March 22nd, there will be a blood drive at Terlinda hosted by the American Red Cross. And I saved the most exciting piece for last. TL is hosting our own musical called The Rock of Ages. So we already had 2 performances, and the remainder 2 are on Friday and Saturday, starting at 7:30. So you guys are welcome to come, and I highly recommend joining. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You know, for our new trustees coming on, you can see it's a mix of things that we need to know what's going on, and then also, you know, what things that you're working on for improvement, so that we can support you in your efforts for that. So thank you so much for that. I think that's it for the student trustees, right? Is there anybody else? Okay, so now we will move on to our union leaders, and we have 2 here in the room. We'll see who'd like to go first. You can please stand and you can just stand there. You don't have to podium.
We want them to go to the
Oh,
podium.
yeah, please go to the podium so we can see you.
Good evening. I'm David Barker representing SRFT. First and foremost, I want to say thank you for being in person. We really appreciate it. As I said a couple weeks ago, just the fact that we're going back in the classroom with students wearing masks. Not an option that we are back here in person together unmasked, and we're very, very happy about that. We also want to say thank you to Superintendent Hugenboom for all the help with the KN95 mask and the KN95 mask for our faculty, and then maybe from students if they need them as well. Also, thank you for the messaging. There was a nice piece about grace, about just being respectful of each other's decisions, and we really appreciate that because we have members that are very excited to go into the classroom tomorrow without wearing a mask for the first time in 2 years. And we also have members who are very anxious about that, so we really appreciate that. And just to encourage the board to keep respect everyone's choice about which, how they want to do that, and that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Our other union leaders here. Molly, do you have anything you want to share?
Katie raised her hand, so would you like to?
Okay.
Hello, sorry. I'm so sorry that I'm not there tonight. I want to second what SRFT said about nice to see you all in the same room. And I look forward to coming in and being a part of that in the future. I had some tax work I had to do, so unfortunately I wasn't able to come in tonight. But we're in conferences right now, and we're very excited to have families back on campuses. It is a little nerve-wracking for some of our teachers and some of our members due to the face masks and the changes in all of the requirements and things like that. But we are happy to see families on campuses. We know Laurel Dell had a big movie night last Friday night that was incredibly successful, and it was so nice to be there with families in the community and eating and just having all of that back from what we've been dealing with for 2 years. The only other thing SRTA wants to say is we are so excited to have Alex back in the elementary district. He's such an asset to our district, and I'm glad that we get to work with him again in the principal role. So thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thank you so much for that report. And now from CSEA, I see Katina, you're on here.
Hi, good evening. My name is Katina Pantazis. I represent the classified staff known as CSEA. It's been some time since I've made a CSEA update, but not much has changed. Many classified staff continue to have increased daily hours and overtime to support the sites, and some are continuing to perform duties outside of their job descriptions. What you may not be aware of is these continued job patterns of working outside of job descriptions can cause immense feelings of inequity amongst coworkers. It's CSEA's hope that with the pending new job descriptions and filling positions that are now empty, this will go away. We've started negotiations with the district. We meet again next week and look forward to completing the new job description soon. That ends the CSA report, and just wanted to say thank you to everybody for being here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. We have missed you, and we're glad that you can report tonight and share.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
We Okay, with that, that concludes our reports, I believe. So now we will move on to public comment on items that are not on the agenda. So this is, we have a full agenda. We have comments on those agendized items, but there's also this time for people to comment on something that is not on the agenda this evening. So do we have any hands raised for that?
Seeing none online.
None online and none in the room. So now we will move on to our staff reports. And I'll just note that we have 9 staff reports. And to our student trustees, that's a lot. I know they're all scintillating topics, but you are welcome to slide off and do your other evening activities whenever you want to do that. So with that, the first one, just note, is very exciting with one of our teachers at Terlinda High School. And I will, we'll do a big round of applause for this. This is a phenomenal opportunity here. Do you want to do an introduction here, please,
Thank you. So I have the privilege of introducing English teacher Mr. David Tao this evening. Mr. Tao is here with a consideration of a sabbatical proposal. The high school teachers union, the SRFT contract does allow for a sabbatical for 1 semester or 1-year programs. Mr. Tao has been selected for a very prestigious program, and that's the Fulbright Roving Scholar in America's program for a full academic year next year. So he is here with us tonight so that he can give the board a presentation about all of the exciting things he would be doing in that year if the board was to approve the sabbatical. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Tao.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm going to set my timer because I want to be a good lesson planner. Before I get started, though, I do want to thank Superintendent Hogeboom for letting me talk tonight, as well as the school board members, especially school member Miss Martine. Congratulations and welcome to the school board. Also, a special shout out to the student school board members. Hi, Sophia, and the 2 incoming Terlinda school board reps. I'm happy to be here tonight. So, yeah, as Amy said, a couple weeks ago, I was notified that I was selected as a Fulbright Roving Scholar in American Studies to Norway for the 2022-2023 school year. I'm going to try to walk through a little bit about myself, since many of you I've gotten a chance to work closely with, but some of you we're totally new. I'll talk a little bit about the program and my research program and questions. I'm mostly going to talk about the benefits for the district and why now, why 2022, 2023. I'll end by giving you a little bit of the letters of support that I've gathered through this process, and then try to leave as much time as possible for questions or comments that you might have. All right, go ahead. So a little bit about me. I am in my 15th year teaching. The last couple years have not been what I expected, but they have counted nonetheless. I spent my last 11 at Terlinda. I'm a 7-time Teacher of the Year and graduation speaker at Terlinda High School. I am currently the English Department Chair. I also serve on Curriculum Council with many of you. I'm also currently in the inaugural cohort of the Teacher Leadership Program, where I get a chance to work with Tyler Graff and Superintendent Hogeboom on a monthly basis as well. Currently, I'm the advisor for the Gender and Sexuality Alliance, the Student Anti-Racism Group SLAM. We're going to be meeting later this week, the newly formed Jewish Student Union, and the Ethics Bowl team at TL. I'm a former National Humanities Center teacher fellow, and I'm a current Teach Plus California policy fellow, where I'm working on developing legislation around culturally relevant pedagogy to be named in both the professional teaching standards and required by credential programs. Additionally, I'm a 4th-year doctoral student. I'm currently in the University of San Francisco's International Multicultural Education Program, where I have an emphasis in human rights and education. So the Roving Scholar in American Studies to Norway program is a really unique program. It only exists in Norway and a couple other countries. It aims to marry the teacher expertise from the United States with Norwegian schools, students, and most importantly for me, communities, like parents and kind of surrounding environments. It's housed at the Norwegian Center for Foreign Languages and Education, which is in Oslo, but partnered with a handful of schools across the country. You can see to your right the 2019-2020 map for the Roving Scholar program. It's really a split between research questions to benefit the home context, so bringing information back to SRCS that will benefit our students and staff and communities, as well as 50% serving as an expert on American education and helping the Norwegian school system improve. It is as Amy said, a 10-month core Fulbright Scholar program. So in terms of this award, it is August 15th to June 15th. So a full school year. My research program is called Identity, Education, and the Civitas in Norway. I feel like since I was doing a project, I had to include Latin in the title somewhere. It really aims to understand how education, identity, and language foster an active and engaged civitas. Civitas is a Latin term meaning a collective public action. I'm really interested in how students develop as leaders and engaged learners. Those of you that have visited my classroom, or in the case of the students, been in my classroom, you know that I really try to exit learners who show up in society as engaged individuals. And I'm really trying to frame that around diversity, cultural, religious, racial, ethnic, as well as linguistic diversity. I find it interesting in Norway because they have among the oldest continuously operating education systems. They've been operating a free public education system since around the 12th century. And so for that reason, I really want to identify how schools in Norway foster engaged student leaders who become shepherds of rich civic life. Norwegians have among the highest rate of civic participation and the highest levels of trust, for their public institutions and government bodies. Forward, please. Thank you. So I want to talk a little bit about the 3 benefits for SRCS. And so they fall into my classroom and my students when I return, my colleagues and the school, TL, as well as our larger district initiatives that we've been working on. So primarily, I want to ensure my students get the best possible experience possible. So I'm really trying to improve my own classroom cultural practices around effective teaching, learning, and assessments that support social engagement, to recognize that learning doesn't stop at the school door. I'm also trying to connect that to larger standards-based education, consistent teaching across classroom, across school, and across county, really. I'm also trying to work on student awareness of their own progress towards learning objectives, having students not just be recipients of grades, but be deeply engaged in their own mastery and development. It also connects to my ongoing projects around student voice, racial justice, standards-based teaching across the school site, project-based learning, open access to advanced coursework, and social emotional health. For my colleagues, I really want to develop some projects around student leadership and campus activism. I'm hoping to work to bring back some criteria for how to develop student awareness of their progress towards learning objectives. I want to find ways to leverage professional learning communities and curriculum and content coaches, especially since Norway doesn't have really any county or state office of education. It really is the Ministry of Education and the school. And then also consensus practices around social emotional health. Norway's on the tail end of a big social emotional push across the country, and really want to see what are some ways that we, with some of the new initiatives that we're putting in place at TL, how can we implement that into our existing programs? And then lastly, I want to connect my work to the graduate profile. I'm really focused on this idea of academic success and engaged learners, as well as interdisciplinary collaboration and horizontal articulation. We really talk a lot about English department, having conversations 9 to 12. I really want to think about interdisciplinary conversation around all 9, all 10, all 11, and 12th grade teachers. I'm also trying to frame this in terms of understanding by design and standards-based methods, as well as teacher leadership. Teacher leadership, having people in the academic community own its improvement, is something really important to me. And this whole project is really framed in terms of the 6 criteria of effective schools: the collaborative teams, regardless of how we define a team, the viable curriculum, monitoring progress, effective instruction, and then really trying to identify some functional intervention systems. So I had to summarize the last couple slides for you. I would do so, if you could go forward 1 slide, in 3 ways. So the first is classroom practices to foster stronger social and civic engagement, to develop school practices to enhance collaboration and promote continuous improvement. And then third, district practices that highlight mastery and expand student voice. So why now? Next slide, please. So for SRCS, we're in the midst of major changes, both before the pandemic and precipitated because of the pandemic caused, at least at TL, a major reevaluation. Students returned with some gaps, but also I think a deeper emotional intelligence and recognizing a need for community. Our bond measures and grants have provided a platform for some of these large scale changes. And I think we've done a really good job over the last couple of years identifying some opportunities, building consensus across the district, and exploring solutions. But I think where we are right now, an outside perspective and potentially a look at what other school systems or even countries are doing really could help guide our next steps. For Norway, Fulbright is also changing. The pandemic, civic unrest, and conflicts have reduced programs for educators, and Norway is currently changing in ways that align with the way our district has already changed, racial, ethnic, linguistic changes, as well as cultural and economic diversity. And I'm confident I have the skills to understand Norway's current state, our own position, and be able to identify ways that we can learn from each other. And then lastly, for myself. So I am at a pivotal point in my professional growth as an SRCS educator. As I said, it's my 15th year teaching. I thought I was going to make it 5 most. And so I am now a decade and a half into my teaching, really trying to think about what I want the next 15 years to be for me. And I've come to realize that I am deeply invested in the long-term student and district success here at SRCS. Partnering with administrators, student leaders, and colleagues over the last couple of years, I've really developed a desire for a critical look at schools. And so through this program, I'm hopeful that this perspective can be clarified and refined so I can return able to more fully serve my students, support my colleagues, and advance as a school leader here at SRCS. One more slide, please. So I have gathered some letters of recommendation and support from Katie Dunlap, my principal at TL, who's been really supportive. Also Lisa Crawford, who is my co-teacher with AP English Language, and Alex Robbins, who is the Social Science Department Chair and the SLAM co-teacher leader and a good friend of mine. Also 2 of my USF faculty. One is Emma Fuentes, who's the department chair of the IME program, and then Susan Katz, who is one of the founding professors at the IME program at USF. One more slide, please. So I think I wrapped up with 15 seconds to spare. So I want to thank you for your time. And I did want to allow 8 seconds for questions, comments, or other information that you might need.
Excellent. Well, thank you. We'll see if there's any questions or comments from the board. Besides, wonderful opportunity.
I mean,
Yes,
I'm
please.
a little, yeah. So David, first of all, this sounds like an incredible opportunity, both for you personally, but also just for the whole district to have this connection. I'm curious because one of the first things you led with was about civic engagement, and we always hear about Norway as, you know, obviously they're the model for things like family leave policies and voter engagement. I'm curious, are you going to be looking at all in terms of the structure of their government and how that has impacted the education system versus our system of democracy, or is that a little too out of scope for what you're looking at?
No, that I think you've kind of wonderfully kind of pinpointed where I want to inquire. I'm really interested in, of course, structures and systems and kind of social ideas that keep this momentum going. But I also want to identify things that are done locally. I've kind of learned through my doctoral work that there are certain things that are kind of part of the playing field for the US, right? We're not going to change our parliament to a parliamentary system. We're not going to abolish state departments of education in favor of only local control. But I think there are, you're absolutely right, some things that they have done, some ways that they have advanced local policy, the way that they have foregrounded inclusion of all different varieties. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do, is to identify what are the things that they have shepherded, that they have actually tried to plant and sow and grow, and what are some things that they've allowed to kind of grow wild and have appeared from some of these opportunities of municipalities and local education authorities to kind of step into. So kind of a balance between those two, governmental solutions as well as kind of local innovation. I'm sorry if I over-answered the question.
No, that was great. Thank you.
Well, great. This will be on our agenda on the consent item under personnel action in the high school level, I believe. So, yep. So stay tuned on that one. But I just want to know, I remember when you went for the shorter Fulbright and you came home with lots of ideas, and we saw them starting to be implemented and the seeds planted, and you're seeing the fruition of that with the power of our student trustees. And we have one student trustee who has her hand up, so trustee Weinstein.
Hi, Mr. Todd. I know you can't see me right now because my head is
I
turned
can see
around.
you.
Hi.
Turn to face the camera.
Okay, yeah, sure. Hi, I mean, I just wanted to let all you guys know, I think Mr. Tao has been like hands down one of, if not the most dedicated teachers, not only inside the classroom, but outside of it. I mean, every single, student club or organization or initiative we have, specifically from Terralinda or the district, he's always a part of. It's like truly inspiring for me, and that's something that I've really I've always looked up to Mr. Tao ever since junior year when we first went to that one committee meeting together. But anyways, I mean, especially expanding student voice, I think that's something that Mr. Hoogboom and I have always talked about, is how to implement a newer model for student voice for the years to come. And so I think Mr. Tao would come up with so many amazing ideas for how to really blossom student voice, and to also, I think, make sure that the middle schools and high schools are in line together and working collaboratively, because ultimately they are part of the same district. And then also just implementing collaboration between teachers and students specifically. But anyways, yeah, it's not even a question, but just praising him for his work, I guess.
Oh, thank you very much. I will take it as a question so that I don't have to deal with the fact that you gave me unwarranted praise. I will say that, as you know, student voice is something, and collaboration are things that are really important to me. And I think that something that I shared with both you and Superintendent Hoogboom is that if we treat these things as policies to implement with juniors and seniors, then it becomes an add-on, right? The things that we do first are the things that we value the most. And so if we want student involvement, it has to be throughout the system. And there are, luckily, countries, schools that are doing this work, that have student voice, that have collaboration as a fundamental value of those systems. And so I hope to find a way for us to maybe taking a different glimpse at the way student voice and collaboration can be integrated, trying to build it in beyond just you and I having wonderful conversations junior and senior year.
Well, thank you.
Yes,
Thank
great.
you. So we know Norway has a population a little less than the Bay Area. It's a very homogeneous country, except for all the immigrants who have arrived and who are arriving today from Ukraine. So I know the lessons that you will share with them from our district will be helpful. And then you'll come back. You're such a model for teacher professionalism, educational leadership, educator leadership, and look forward to what you bring back for our teachers to learn from and to discuss it, and for you to come and share with us as a board what you learned. So
Yes,
stay
please.
tuned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And thank you, Amy, for helping them through this process and bringing it to us. The next item on here is an update on our EL master plan. And I believe we'll be bringing in the director of our EL program, Cecilia Perez. There you are.
Hi there. Good evening, everyone. Joining me tonight is going to be our accountability coordinator, Lori Owens, and we're going to give you just a really brief overview of some of the work we're doing to refine and strengthen our RFET progress monitoring. So thank you for giving us time on tonight's really busy agenda. The next slide, we're going to try and move kind of quickly, so there's time for questions afterwards. Just to kind of refocus us, we've seen this slide a few times throughout the year, but as you know, we have identified some key areas where we really want to focus our work. And the work in implementing the EL master plan is very broad. It involves a lot, but I want to kind of demonstrate how a lot of the actions on this slide really overlap with doing the best we can to improve outcomes for our English learners in our district. The next slide. And just as a reminder that one of our key actions that we established in our Together 2020 plan was to really be thoughtful and comprehensive in having our eyes on English learner data in all forms, from the granular level to the statewide assessment level. So, and number two, one of our key actions is to implement our revised 4-year RFET monitoring process. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what that means, and then Lori's going to give us an overview of kind of break it down a little bit so you can envision what that process looks like at our schools. So progress monitoring has a direct impact. You can go back one more slide, Christina.
Sorry.
That's okay. I know they can be tricky sometimes and they skip 2 or 3 slides at once. Progress monitoring is really integral to the work that we do, not just so that we can gauge and ensure that our students are making the progress that we would expect them to make, but so that we are seeing areas where students perhaps have overcome they've passed a proficiency level, and we want to make sure that we're challenging students. And on the other end of the spectrum, it helps us find out areas where our students may need some more review, some more practice, and some additional support. Progress monitoring happens all the time. Teachers are doing it constantly, sometimes very often on very informal levels, observing their students, listening to their feedback, observing them working in collaborative groups, many checks for understanding that happen while you're teaching, while you're working with small groups. And then we have the curriculum-based assessments, unit tests, chapter tests, teacher-created assessments. So we have a lot of measures and data points that we can use to monitor how our students are progressing in their academics. And then we use this data to create, really, it's a great data point for teachers for lesson planning. So teachers know what areas they may need to review, what areas they can accelerate a little bit, and with whom. So it's a great way for us to measure the proficiency levels across the subject areas and develop those individualized learning targets for our students, and to identify if there's any differentiated needs or supports that they might need. One of the things I mentioned is all of these data points, and most of the data points that we have, not just in San Rafael, but really as a school system, are really based on a monolingual approach. So a lot of the standardized assessments that students take are really, they were all developed in the lens of a native English speaker. So it's really important that as educators, we are taking an additional step and looking at data that also shows the language development of our second language learners or our English language learners. So we have a program called the Federal Monitoring Program and Progress Monitoring. Gloria is going to get into kind of the nitty-gritty of what that means, and then we'll circle back and share some of the feedback we had from this revised process that we've been piloting this year. Lori. Oh, do we get Lori in the meeting?
We did, yes. Let me check. Lori, you there? Did we lose her? Let me bring her back. Lori, in a moment, you'll be able to rejoin as a panelist and you can unmute yourself.
Okay, can everyone hear me? Got bumped off. I'm just right next door too. Okay, so I just want to mention, I don't think you can see me, but I'm just going to talk a little bit about the federal laws that are required of districts. So districts are required to monitor students who were exited from English learner status for 4 years, and they were exited to be reclassified fluent English proficient. Districts that receive funding, such as Title III, may be reviewed for a federal program monitoring review, where they kind of just review different compliance-related topics, one of which is really to ensure that our programs meet the fiscal and programmatic requirements. Next slide. So this process really ensures that EL students have not been prematurely exited, that any areas that were a struggle in the EL program have been remedied, and that they're really meaningfully participating in the district's educational programs compared to their never EL peers. San Rafael City Schools monitors our former EL students for at least 4 years to really ensure that the expected growth is happening in the academic content. Site language assessment teams, known as LATs, and student study teams, known as SSTs, review that data on growth and achievement in language in all academic core areas to determine the most applicable interventions. Next slide. So the way that the monitoring year is determined, the first monitoring year, is really that full first academic school year. So if a student is reclassified this year, they won't be on that first year of monitoring until the next school year. So as you can see in this table, school year 17-18, if I was a student that was reclassified, they wouldn't be monitored until the following year, and that would be year 1 of the process. And this year, 2022, that student that was reclassified in 17-18 is still being monitored as their 4th year. Next slide. So it really starts at the district office, the process, and the timeline. In January and February, sites receive students who have been reclassified a list noting all state and local data points, and they receive pre-populated forms along with those lists with all the necessary data to really make an informed decision about a student's progress. Next slide. Once the site receives the site lists and the pre-populated forms, they then are going to share them with the teachers for input. Coming back then to the site administrator, who's really going to compile them into 2 groups. Students who are making sufficient academic progress and students who are not making sufficient progress. A LAP meeting is then to be held to discuss interventions of reclassified students not making acceptable progress. Students who are making acceptable progress are checked off, and all forms are then sent back to Ed Services by March 31st. And so now Cecilia's going to discuss the site feedback of our pilot this year for the revised process.
This is a portion of it.
Yeah, so as Lori mentioned, this is a required process, but we also want to make sure that it is streamlined and effective and really does meet the needs of our students and our sites, because it's an additional task that that needs to be done. So we work directly with the admin team from Davidson, from Carolinda, Laureldale, and Sun Valley, just to get kind of a small sampling from a K-12 perspective. And we wanted some numbers that were manageable to try out this new monitoring tool that's been refined from previous years. So the positives of the new process from those sites were that they liked the January-February timeline because it lined up with the semester grading periods or the report card grades from December. They liked that it was clear and really laid out step by step. There's a checklist that accompanies this, like they're same as with a reclassification checklist. First do this, then do this. So that slide Lori just shared, it's laid out very clearly in the form and in the whole process. It's always eye-opening, and I just keep going back. Eyes on data is so critical, and eyes on English learner data is just absolutely necessary. So most students that the principals and the site teams and the LAT teams looked at they were doing fine, and they knew that they were doing fine. And then there was a smaller percentage of students that really they thought they were doing okay because they weren't floundering at all, but they weren't quite making some of the gains that we would expect them to. They weren't quite moving ahead in their academic trajectory. So this process really allowed those teams to be able to identify some specific supports that those students could benefit from to help keep them moving forward in their academic progress. And just having a lot of the work happening at the district level with getting the forms pre-populated, getting a lot of that academic data and assessment data in there, they found very helpful. Some of their suggestions on how to improve the process is to include some additional data points and information on the form. So Lori and I are working on that. Attendance was a big one because we know that attendance can affect your academic progress. So we're going to include a field that shows if the student has been habitually truant, how many absences they have. Also, some little logistical pieces to include specifically what grading period that we are using to assess their progress, and then whether or not the student receives any special ed services or may have a 504 on file. So that would give us kind of an additional place to look for information to see how they're progressing. This is something we're working on district-wide and building out our multi-tiered systems of support, but schools and sites, they really want some more resources and support around building those interventions and those additional supports. So we're going to continue to work on that. This is where a lot of that work overlaps, the work that's happening across the board in Ed Services and with our coaches and at the site level with ILT teams and the coaches. So we were strategic in choosing the sites that I mentioned before because the numbers seem manageable to pilot this, but we need to be realistic that we have some sites in our district that have extremely high numbers of English learners. and much higher RFEP students than other sites. So Lori and I are taking that feedback from sites, and we're trying to figure out ways that we could do some more kind of streamlining of the amount of students that, or forms that get sent to the site. And we could do some of that back work so that we can sort these forms in stacks, because it's a lot. I think, for instance, one example, Davidson, we had identified one grade level to pilot, and the Davidson team was amazing. They said, no, we want to do all grade levels, 6, 7, 8. Well, it was close to 200 students to go through this pilot, and they did it, which was great. But we also want to be cognizant of the workload at the sites. And so if there's anything we can do at the district level to help minimize that, or help do some of the pre-work so that the process can go a little more quickly for the site teams, we will definitely do that. And then they basically want fillable docs, which is doable. We can do that instead of sending hard copies. So it's really valuable to go through this process with a smaller handful of sites just to get an idea and some initial feedback. And then with this feedback, we've created our next steps, which is the next slide. So we're going to be sharing the things I just discussed. Lori and I are working together to implement some of those changes. And then in one of the upcoming PAC meetings or principals meetings, we're going to provide just an overview of how that pilot went this year, with the understanding that we'll be doing a more broad principal training at the beginning of next school year, so that this will be pushed out across all sites, and that'll be fully implemented across our district. Ongoing technical support. This is where I really do have to take my hat off to Lori. She is constantly receiving questions from the sites, and she's super responsive, because this is a lot. There's a lot of steps involved in progress monitoring, and just really a lot of the requirements we have under Title III, and Lori is very responsive. So that will continue to happen. Site principals, coaches, site teams will have those resources available between Lori and me, and then their own site leaders that they have, so that they feel that they're ready to take this on. We need to figure out a way to capture a lot and record the information that's happening. So if it is decided by a team that a student could benefit from specific interventions, we want to make sure that we're capturing that centrally, so that matriculates from year to year. And that also goes hand in hand with some of the work happening in the MTSS model. So we feel really good about what we accomplished this year and moving forward, and we want to continue to improve this process as we go. And that is hopefully a brief overview. We did go too much in the weeds with that for you, but are there any questions?
It's fabulous to see this, and scary to think that we didn't have it before. And all the more power to our students who make their way through our system with the support of the teachers and the people they can find around them, but without this really structured approach. And it's why we do a pilot, so you can figure all these things out with just a fewer number of students. So trustees, any questions? This is a really important topic.
One, but I defer to my other.
Okay, anyone can start. Well,
yeah, go ahead,
sure.
Please start.
So Cecilia, thank you so much for the presentation. I appreciate it, and so glad to have you on board to explain this very, very technical terms. So I was wondering, have we seen, I know we're doing the pilot, but in general, have you seen, since you started, like some sort of trajectory of the students with COVID that you can analyze and tell us, things have been improving since we started going back in person? Like, do you have any data right now that you can compare to something in the past that can say the efforts that we're doing this year or last year, demonstrates that we are doing well in this area and we need to improve in this other area? So is there any specific things that you see based on this pilots and based on this, what you're trying to put in place?
Yeah, we didn't look at specifically at any of the learning loss that happened during COVID. That kind of, when it gets down to that level, that really is a discussion that happens at the site level, especially in middle or high school, when students have multiple teachers and they may be doing fine in one class and struggling in another. But it would be, and I think that's one of the reasons why that attendance piece was recommended to include in there. It would be interesting to see, in all honesty, Trustee Martell, it's a little too soon for us to know. Right now, we just need to kind of get the ball rolling and get it implemented. But, in one ways, this feels like a really small step, but at the same time, it's really opening the doors to how are we improving outcomes for our English learners? How are we holding ourselves accountable? And how are we really meeting their needs. And it seemed easy, although it wasn't, it seemed easy to start with the RFEP students because it's just as urgent, it's required, but it gives us kind of, it opens the door to really expand this work across the board, all the way from our RFEP to our newcomers and everything in between. So in terms of data points and the effectiveness of this model, aside from the fact that it is a federally required requirement, we really want to make this not just a check the box, we meet the requirement. How is this actually impacting student achievement? And that's what Lori and I are both really committed to that.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Trustee Martin.
I just have a question, Cecilia. Thank you so much, and thank you, Lori, for your presentation. I was just curious, how is this socialized with the parents about this journey they're about to be on, and just like where you're trying to get them along those markers?
Yeah, well, so specifically to RFEP, if the student does seem to have areas in which they need some support, usually it varies, right? There's a range. A child might just need an overview of specific concepts. Then other students might need a more robust intervention plan in which parents would be called in and consulted and really get to know what that plan is and what those students' learning targets are. So I can't say for every single student, RFEP student, a parent would be notified of this process happening. But if there was a student that we felt needed some additional support, we would certainly, the site teams would certainly move into a student study team process to get that documented and to make sure the parents understand. Especially with the older students, it might involve them doing some additional time, some additional work. Their advisory or tutorial time may look a little bit different.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, Preeti, go ahead.
Marina, did you have your hand up? Oh, okay, I couldn't see him.
My question is about this was a few board meetings ago, but we talked about the long-term EL students. And I'm wondering for that category of students, and we know that it's not just an issue in San Rafael City schools, but it's actually an issue all over California. This is a kind of a pernicious issue where people aren't exiting and getting fluency, getting to that RFEP, I think it was the term. But I'm wondering, how do you see this system helping either with the students that are already long-term ELs or hopefully helping people and before they become a long-term EL?
Yes, and that's what I refer to when I say this is really opening the door for some really deeper, harder conversations we have to have. So both Lori and I have been attending some CDE trainings around LTEL, and there's a whole new publication, kind of a follow-up publication that was pretty groundbreaking around 10 years ago of how do we combat the LTEL problem, and now we have a follow-up to that. The good news is we're doing a lot of it in our district. We truly are. A lot of the initiatives that we have really dug our teeth into with SEAL and the teacher leadership team that Mr. Tao was speaking about with standards-based grading, we're doing a lot of this. We need to do more. And what we need to do is, as we're looking through our curriculum, as we're designing lessons, we need to be looking at the language standards in tandem with that. We don't do that enough. The progress monitoring, like I said, is happening all the time, but a really specific kind of next step that we're doing is Lori and I have looked at the LTEL data. We've kind of looked at 2 data points: students that have been identified at risk of becoming LTELs and students that have already been identified as LTEL. So that's part of the work that we're going to do with our principals to give them support, and then they can work with their teams. Because for most LTELs, doing the same thing, repeating the same thing is not what they need. They need kind of a different approach. They need a new way to engage in their learning. And most LTELs really are English dominant. They might not have the academic language yet. So we need to look at the language needs, but we also need to look at the engagement needs of those students and really get creative and innovative and design some classes and some approaches that look different and feel different. Because in many ways, we failed them, right? We create LTELs in the school system. Our students don't come to us as LTELs. We create that across the board, across the state. And as you refer to, the numbers show that. So we need to find ways to think out of the box and get more innovative so that we can re-engage these students and really fulfill our promise to them.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Trustee Palmer.
Hi, Cecilia. Thank you so much for this technical presentation for me. I did hear you saying that you need more support. You need support from the district to get to the bottom of being able to identify these different areas that you're trying to monitor. So I can say we can take off and start implementing it with the students. What type of support is it that you need from the district?
Mm-hmm. I think the areas of need that continually tend to surface really go hand in hand with that MTSS model. So if you're looking at tier 1 core instruction, first instruction, which is by far the best instruction, that's where you're going to see the most impact. We need to continue to go hard on our professional development, and we need to use the data to inform that professional development. So that's kind of the tier 1, because we want to be able to support everybody in their practice and make sure that the strategies that we are using in our classrooms are actually the research-based strategies that can impact learning for students. That second tier is where I think the needs really arise, because that's when students need a little extra, and there's not always the manpower, the program, the expertise, or the time in the day to provide additional tutoring or additional intervention. So those are the areas that we're working on with our MTSS model. And I know that in elementary, for example, I can speak to, I know that the coaches are really trying to identify programs and structures of how we can deliver that throughout the day and then also beyond. Because we need to move away from remediation and really improve our practice overall so that students don't fall so far behind. But we know for a number of reasons, there will be students that simply need more. They need additional support. Correct. The question is, what does that support look like? When do we provide it? Who provides it? And how do we pay for it? So I'm less concerned about how do we pay for it, because I feel like right now we have more, we have access to different kinds of funding more than we did before. But it really is, within a school week, how do we provide all this additional support? And on the other side, how do we support the family and bring our parents into the conversation so that they know this is why we're doing this, this is how you can support it at home, and along the way, identify any needs the family may be having, or any barriers, and try and do all we can to eliminate those barriers so that they can best support their students' learning.
We still have a lot of work to do. Thank you. Thank you so much. You're doing great. Mucho trabajo is right.
I want to see if our student trustees have any questions. This is an important topic, I know, for all of your classmates and students in your schools. So, I do have a question, and Laura, you may know the answer to this. I don't know. But you've been looking at the numbers. You tested 200 students at Davidson, maybe some in the other pilot programs, other schools. What percentage would you say, más o menos, of students who are at a level where you would contact the student or would contact the parent about what you're finding?
So the percentage of students who are not meeting the standards or not making acceptable progress?
Right, sufficient enough for you to contact or to talk about contacting the family or the student. So
within those,
this is a kind of a baseline question because this is a pilot. You have this is the first year, but seeing how we didn't have this before, I'm curious to see do we have an estimate of what the number is?
It really varied per site. Like the elementary sites, it was just a handful of kiddos. And then in the middle school, it was less, maybe 20%, 30%. Cecilia, would you say that? And then at Terra Linden,
honestly, if I'm being honest, I can't quantify it, but I'm a visual learner. And I know when I was at Davidson and we were going through these forms together, the assistant principal, Kernan, she basically had 3 stacks. And kids, they're doing fine, they're right on target. Kids we may want to dig into, and these kids, it was a much smaller stack, but these were kids that they definitely, so I can't quantify that. But it would be good data for us to have, how many students are actually plugged into these tier 2 interventions and then tier 2, 3 interventions. How many have been identified as potentially having a learning disability? How many perhaps need to be assessed to see if there's something more that they need?
Well, that's really important to hear, and I think to think about for being able to track it from year to year to see how it's going. I imagine students would fall off that list the next year with the interventions, and that number would be smaller. So
Yeah, and I think that's really the important, some of the site feedback too, and part of the revised process is to have that structure in place so that we have all that documentation so we can be getting the data and reviewing it regularly.
Well, thank you so much for the report. We're very glad. I'd like to see if there's any public comment on this. This is one of our major initiatives on the EL master plan, and I don't see anything in this room. Is there anybody online?
No, that's Zoom.
Not on Zoom. Okay, so thank you very much, and we look forward to getting your next update. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next report is on the science course sequence process update. And I believe that's Tyler Graff, and there you are. Good evening, Tyler.
Good evening, President Jackson, Board of Education, and Superintendent Hogaboom. I'm excited to come back and talk to you a little bit about the science course sequence update. This is a really similar presentation to the one that I gave earlier in the year with a couple key shifts and changes. We actually had our last meeting, our most recent meeting last week, and I think that one went really well, and excited to share with you a little bit of the progress there. So just as a reminder, this work really comes out of Together 2024, which also was preceded by our equity audit. I think those are two important things for us to keep remembering, that this work is coming from somewhere. Additionally, one thing that we found out was that we had two different pathways at each of our traditional high schools. So Terra Linda started with biology, and they had a couple different systems in place for allowing some students to take biology, and some students didn't take biology till their sophomore year, while San Rafael started with physics of the universe, and then everyone moved to biology their sophomore year. And that created some inequities in our system across the whole system, and we wanted to remedy those inequities by bringing both schools and the departments together. In addition, we found that, and I think we're continuing to find, that our departments have been implementing NGSS at different levels and haven't had the support that they've needed from the district office yet. So those are two additional things that aren't on the slide that are important to note, that there's two different course sequences and there's different implementation of NGSS, partially because we haven't given enough support from the district office to this point. Next slide. So these are kind of the project goals. First and foremost, we want to make sure that all of our freshmen are successful. That's kind of one of the first tenets that we had when our two course pathways diverged, was that Santa Fe High was really trying to move away from biology because their students at Santa Fe weren't being successful, and they wanted to try a different course, which was physics of the universe. Another goal here is coherence. So aligning our pathway between Terra Linda and Santa Fe and eliminating tracking patterns, particularly in the freshman and sophomore level. And you'll see that with our English. Every student takes English 9, every student takes English 10. And you see it in history as well. You see it in a couple different subject areas. Another goal is differentiation, and this is kind of more of a long-term goal once we start the professional development, is that we want students, especially in that freshman, sophomore year, to be well supported, to be successful, to get an A or B or C for the class, in addition to challenging students that are ready for the challenge. So teachers need to be prepared to do some serious differentiation in those first two years. And then the other tenet that we're really focused on, and this is something we've heard loud and clear from our families as well, is that we want opportunities for advancement. We want to make sure our students can both meet and exceed the UC A to G requirements and have plenty of opportunity to access AP and honors classes, and potentially even a dual enrollment at COM. So those are kind of our four tenets that we keep coming back to. This is kind of the different inputs along the process. Obviously, we have the committee members down there on the left, and a huge shout out to all of them. They've been thinking about this, not just in the committee meetings, but outside of the committee meetings, talking to their principals, talking to families, talking to students. I know Sophia has weighed in on this with her principal and a couple of her teachers. And they've been talking to each other a lot about the pros and cons of different options. So this is definitely a topic that's taking a lot of time and effort, and rightfully so. We want to get this decision right. So the committee members have been doing an amazing job. as you'll probably remember, we were working with Lawrence Hall of Science, and based on the last couple of meetings, we found that we kind of wanted to go a different direction, and we weren't quite getting exactly what we needed from them. We wanted a little bit more focus on the NGSS and creating some common language between our teachers around the NGSS, and that's the next generation science standards. So we're transitioning away from them, and we've been working with a gentleman named Todd Samet, who actually helped the TAM district transition to NGSS. They had a similar issue where their high schools were misaligned and had different course sequences, and he was a key contributor to bringing their high schools together, and is actually a former science teacher in the TAM district, so has a lot of credibility in the community. Another thing we need to do, we had one community meeting, and I think a big learning that we took from that was that we went out to the community too early in the process, where we didn't really have a clear decision made or a clear couple of options made. And I think that lack of clarity wasn't really helpful. So we're tailoring back and slowing down before we go back out for more community input. There's the Secondary Curriculum Advisory Council. If we do any new courses, we'll need to get those approved through them. And then obviously your final stamp to approve any new courses or course sequences as well. So this is the general timeline. You see to the left, there's a few things that are in kind of a gray color. And we're kind of in this zone of reflect and regroup over the past maybe 6 weeks. And we just had our first revised committee meeting down there in the March section. And that committee, we had Todd Samet come to present about the NGSS. And I felt that, and Superintendent Hogaboom can probably add to this, that the tenor of the group really softened as we had that conversation. I think people came in ready to kind of argue one side or the other. And by the end of the meeting, folks really were open to the other side and kind of exploring new things. So I think that was really good. Mm-hmm. We're going to have another one of those at the end of the month. And then we're going to go back out to the community once we have a clearer vision of like, hey, these are the 2 or 3 options we're thinking about. Give us input and feedback on what we would consider. And then we're going to bring back another revised committee meeting. And at that point, we want to bring some students to the table as well. I know Sophia's one student who's already interested in coming to that meeting. We'll probably have a couple from Sanderfell and a couple from Terra Linda to kind of share their experiences with science courses and have them kind of give us a gut check on whether the frameworks that we're considering actually work for them. So that'll be good. And then we'll bring final recommendation to the board, do some PD planning in the 22-23 school year where we're actually designing the courses, and then implementation won't happen until 23-24. So this is kind of the current model. And if you can see the colors here, the yellow would indicate a graduation requirement. Right now we have a 2-year graduation requirement. So freshman year, you would kind of take NGSS Science number 1, or for this, in this case, potentially Physics of the Universe or Life Science. We're not sure on the actual course yet. Your sophomore year, you would take NGSS 2, which could be potentially Life Science or Physics of the Universe or Chemistry and Earth Systems. And then you see the kind of bluish teal below that. If you were a student who really wanted to push into science a little bit more, it was a passion area of yours, you kind of wanted to prioritize that in your schedule, you could potentially take NGSS 3 your sophomore year. We hypothesize that we'll have very few students that do that. When you double up sophomore year, you really have impacts on math and social studies and the other course areas you have. So that's probably a very rare student that's going to do that. Then the teal at the top would be your junior year, NGSS number 3. This is not a graduation requirement, but is a recommendation from UC A to G. So you can still be UC A to G without this course. You can still graduate without this course. However, if you're aiming to get into a more competitive UC, it's recommended that you take that NGSS 3. Again, if you're a science go-getter, you could take an AP honors class. You could kind of double up there. And then obviously your senior year, you have an opportunity to take an AP or honors class or double up if you'd like. When you look at the private schools in the area, they actually recommend doubling up as a strategy in math and science when you're going for more competitive colleges, something like a UC Berkeley or a Stanford. But it's not required. So it kind of gives the flexibility and the advancement, which is one of those core tenets we were looking at earlier. Next slide. So this would be an example of a student who's just working to graduate. They'd take NGSS 1, NGSS 2, and then everything else is grayed out. They're not going to take any other courses. Then they can push into a CTE course. Maybe they're really interested in music and they want to take more music classes or engineering classes. They can go ahead and do that without clogging up their schedule with other science courses. So that's kind of a, we're probably going to have 40 to 50% of our students, maybe a little around 40% of our students take that pathway. The next pathway would look something like this. You'd take NGSS 1, 2, and 3. You'd get all of the standards from NGSS in your freshman, sophomore, and junior year. That makes you UC A to G eligible for relatively competitive UC schools. You've gotten earth science, life science, chemistry, and biology woven in through all three of those courses. So a lot of our students are going to take this pathway. We find that most of our students take 3 courses over the course of their high school career. This is probably going to be the standard for most kids. Then the next one, this is a student who's interested in science, but isn't like the science king or queen. They like it, but they're not going to be going into a STEM or STEAM major in college. NGSS 1, NGSS 2, NGSS 3, and maybe an AP or honors biology or an AP Chem their senior year. And then the final advanced option, this is for the student who really wants to be like a chemical engineer or maybe be a biology major or something like that. They'd take NGSS 1 freshman year, NGSS 2 sophomore year, NGSS 3 also sophomore year, and then they might take an AP biology and an AP environmental sciences their junior year, and then maybe an AP chemistry their senior year. So that's a student that has prioritized science over other things. In this case, they might take a year less of foreign language. They might take a year less of art or music, but this is a rare student too. This is not something that many students would do. This is for a student who in their freshman, sophomore, junior year has really identified STEM as a field that they want to go into in college. I think it's a rare occasion that we have students that are laser-like focused by the time they're a sophomore and they know what they want to do when they grow up. So this would be, a smaller percentage of our students that choose this pathway. Couple questions, and these are continued questions that we brought to you in the first time. We need to keep Miller Creek in the conversation here because their students are going to matriculate to Terra Linda. It's important that they know. We did have quite a few Miller Creek families at the last parent meeting. We'll do a proactive engagement of them for this next parent meeting as well. And I will reach out to their director of curriculum instruction to make sure that we're aligned there. What are other surrounding districts doing? TAM is doing kind of an NGSS 1, 2, 3 freshman, sophomore, junior year. The difference is they are requiring 3 years for graduation where we only require 2. That does create a little bit of complexity there. So a question would be for us, do we want to expand our graduation requirements? How does that impact our graduation rates, particularly with the number of long-term English learners that we have or newcomer students that we have coming to the country or coming to our schools from other countries? And then obviously, how can we keep the graduate profile together 2024 as part of the planning process? We're really trying to stay focused and not have extra projects that fall outside of Together 2024 because there's already a lot there and a lot of really important work there. So we want to stay focused. So at that point, I'd love to open it up for questions.
Okay, thank you so much. I'd like to see, first of all, if our student trustees have anything they'd like to add to this. And Harder, Trustee Harder.
Yeah, I was wondering, I know that TL has MCEL and then Santa Fe has our Physics Academy. How are we, and especially I know at least for us, I don't know what it looks like for TL, but we're changing the year in which you can enter, how many years you can do. So is that a big part of the conversation, or is it really that's more for the specific students who are entering that program?
That's an excellent question. And what we're trying to do is leave the integrity of those programs as they are, and kind of let those programs make decisions. We don't want to do one size fits all. We recognize the engineering program that we have at Santa Fe and the MCEL at Terra Linda as really remarkable programs that we want families to come to. And they have pathways that are already established. So we'll probably leave those pathways kind of as they are. If we did move to a 3-year graduation requirement, that might impact those two programs.
Great, thank you.
Anything from Terra Linda? Question?
Yeah, okay, quite a few things. I'm gonna let these two go first. They both really love science and they really taking a lot of challenge science classes. So yeah, I'll let you guys go first.
My first question is, why are we offering physics as a freshman year course when it requires a high level of math to really understand it and really be able to do it?
Okay. Did you hear the question?
I did. That was a really good question. And the traditional physics that we've all grown up with, so the physics that maybe some of the board members took in their high school career, really was a kind of a biology, physics, chemistry. That is very traditional track and doesn't take into consideration the next generation science standards. The way the standards are written are actually an Algebra 1 focus. So all 3 of the courses, both physics, basically the biology, and basically the chemistry, are all through an Algebra 1 lens. And I think that's a huge shift for a lot of parents and community members, because your assumption is absolutely accurate for the way physics has been designed in the past. And the way we would adjust to that is for a student like yourself who's really interested in taking physics, we're still going to have an AP physics that might be significantly more math heavy, kind of more of a college level type physics class.
Thank you.
Good question.
I would just be curious. I'm wondering for students who are maybe they go into high school and science is their favorite class. Is there any opportunities for advancement in freshman year? I just noticed that there was only the option for physics of the universe.
So what we would do is we would have every student in the freshman year would take physics of the universe. And we kind of have that already. Essentially, if you're at Terra Linda, you take biology. And if you're at Santa Fe, you take physics of the universe. And there aren't really choices around that. And a lot of the research shows that high achieving or affluent students, when in a heterogeneous class, achieve at the same rates that they do in a differentiated class where they're in like an honors or an AP. However, low income or English language learner students actually perform at a higher level. So it's when they're in a heterogeneous class. But if you put EL students or low income students in one track and then affluent and or white students in another track, these students do about the same and these kids actually do worse. So putting them in the same class doesn't hurt these students, but helps these students a lot.
Okay. Any others?
I have quite a few questions actually in comments, but the first one is, I noticed that the month for student input is during AP testing season. So I know a lot of students who will be participating now are probably juniors and seniors who've taken a lot of science courses already. So I don't know what the participation would be like if it's in May. So I don't know if there's like a possibility of implementing the parent and student input in April. That's my first comment. And then the other one is that I don't know, I talked to like a few students from Santa Fe about physics of the universe, and as you kind of mentioned, it's not like traditional physics. But I know that once you get into college, they are teaching like traditional physics as well as AP physics is traditional. So my perspective, and then I've talked to a bunch of other teachers, is that we don't really understand the point of having physics of the universe if it's not going to prepare you for a physics down the line that you might take in high school or college. Because I noticed that the model that you presented was sort of the, physics of the universe freshman year. So is that kind of the path you think we're gonna be taking, is sort of leaning towards that freshman year instead of biology?
The way the team is kind of talking right now is freshman course would likely be a life science course or biology or a physics of the universe. And this is part of the transition here is it's not just the course sequence that we're dreaming up. It's actually a transition to the next generation science standards. And I think because we haven't done that in a really well-supported way, there's a lot of misconception around what colleges are looking for. And the folks that wrote the next generation science standards actually were, high school teachers, college professors, biologists, chemists, physicists. And what they find is that even with the traditional physics course or the traditional chemistry course or the traditional biology course, kids are coming to college underprepared. And it's because the traditional high school course sequence over focuses on minutia. So knowing very specific things as opposed to habits of mind and process of scientific thinking. And what college professors are looking for more of is students that can come to college prepared to think like a scientist, not know discrete facts like a scientist. Does that make sense? Because the college professors are confident that if you can think like a scientist, that the professors in college can teach you the minutia that you might need to know to get to the highest level of science at college.
Mm-hmm.
So it's another NGSS shift.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, because this is like for a future discussion, obviously. But anyways, and another thing I just wanted to emphasize from talking to a lot of students is like sort of what Tess was mentioning, that from the pathway that I've done by doing biology, then chemistry, in my mind and a lot of other students' minds who are focusing on, doing STEM in the future, is that those are the kind of like the foundational level science classes, because almost every other science class is based off of biology and chemistry. And that allows for a lot of freedom to basically take any course you want your junior or senior year. So that's why, students like whatever, Tess and Liam right next to me, they have the freedom to basically take whatever they want future years. And college is also not they're challenging themselves because they have so much freedom to double up their junior and senior year. But anyways, yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. We'll bring it back to the board here. But before we get board question, I just want to check Christina very quickly and see if we have any public comment on this item. There's no public comment in the room here, and we'll just give people a chance to raise their hand if anybody wants to say anything on Zoom.
Seeing none.
Okay, so yes, Gina Daly.
Thanks, Tyler, for the presentation and the update. I would love to, as we're trying to get more feedback from both parents but students, seeing that the planned implementation for this is in the 23-24 school year, I'd really like us to do some targeted outreach to Davidson Middle School and also to our elementary schools, because those are the students that are going to be eventually doing these pathways. And also with that in mind, I wonder if we could coordinate a little better with the Miller Creek School District. And actually, when we get to sort of the decision point where we're trying to decide between, say, 2 options, 3 options, maybe we request to present it to the Miller Creek School Board so that it's not, obviously it's not an action plan for them, but that could be a way to try to get more information out, because I can tell you a few of the Miller Creek School Board members did provide notice about, the few nights that you guys have had. I think the one night we really had wide public engagement. But I think that given that we're hoping that a lot of those Miller Creek students are eventually going to go to Terra Linda High School, it would be good to provide that forum. So I'm happy to help facilitate that if necessary, but just want to make sure, in addition to hearing from our current students and how they're feeling about the science course load, especially because they're in those classes right now, that we're also engaging with students that will be going through this course load in the future.
Absolutely. Great recommendation. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I know we're running, thank you, President Jackson. I know we're running late tonight. So the only thing maybe, Tyler, that we can check in at some point is like, I would like to know a little bit of how this will make the student profile that we want to achieve more, I want to say successful, but the ability to graduate and go to college. Like, how does this help our students to actually go to the college of their choices, and how are these changes really supporting that path? So I would like to be a little bit more educated on this, especially because you started talking about the AG requirements and how we need to support folks that are not taking those requirements and they cannot go into a UC system. So I really would like to eventually have like, okay, by doing this or taking this different paths, this is how our students are more increase their chances are actually going to college. Like, or so I don't know if there's something you can speak to that, or we need to meet and talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I'm happy to meet with any of the board members, and if Superintendent Hogaboom wants to do a study session, I'm happy to come back and present more.
Yeah.
I felt like Todd Samet really helped us all on Thursday better understand why things are the way they are with science because of the next generation science standard shifts. And because he's had this conversation already with the TAM district, and the TAM district landed on NGSS 1, NGSS 2, NGSS 3, starting with physics of the universe, going to life science, and finishing with chemistry and earth systems, requiring all students to take all three for graduation. So it's a hyper complex shift that does deserve extra attention. So I'll defer to Superintendent Hogaboom on this. If you want to do a board study session, I'm happy to prepare that. If you want a one-on-one conversation with me, I'm happy to do that as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Can I add something to it?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Thank you, Taylor, for the presentation. I'm very, very interested in what you're working on, and hopefully we can align this for both high schools as soon as we can. You just mentioned that this will become effective 23-24. So I want to echo both of my colleagues over here, starting with bringing this information to middle schools students, and maybe share this with the parents. And I'm advocating Spanish-speaking parents, but totally lost about what children need. Well, not totally, but we need more information about this. And that would be a way to also support our children if you can come to us and explain all this in Spanish.
And I actually think the more that I listen, go ahead.
No, I'm done.
So I, as a teacher leader, almost a decade ago, I was part of a team that was learning about NGSS as it was coming out, and it is wildly complex. And I think the way Todd Samet described it for us on Thursday is something that would be really digestible for a parent perspective. So I think that's a good recommendation. We can come to, a DLAC meeting, or we can go present it at other places to help better educate parents in general on the NGSS shifts, because it is not a simple shift, and it's big and it's complex. It's both.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay, Superintendent, you have anything to?
Yeah, I guess the last thing that I would say is I think that one of the complicating factors is we're not implementing NGSS. So they're trying to do physics of the universe at Santa Fe High for freshmen. But the other courses, it's basically the old physics course. It's the old chemistry course. And one of the things about the 3 NGSS courses is that they bring in, is it the earth science in there, Tyler, or whatever? So you're actually bringing in 4 things into those 3 classes, which is kind of cool if you can require 3 years. So we do want to make sure that we're addressing the needs of kids who just want 2 years, or maybe they want to take physiology or AP environmental, they're not that. And we want to make sure that kids who really want to go into science, so trying to meet both this is difficult. But I think what we learned at that last meeting where Todd Samet came, unfortunately the Lawrence Hall of Science failed abysmally, was in the facilitation and really understanding what next gen, we're not doing next gen science standards. So if we were trying to do this with the regular traditional courses, it wouldn't work, but that's not, like I said, so that's my learning is we need to make the move to next gen science standards. And that was, I say basically that we had 3 things that I was putting out there that we had to adhere. 1, we're going to adhere to next gen science standards, which we're not teaching that way. That's why we need at least a year of PD to get that in place. 2, we want to make sure we avoid tracking whenever possible. We want those common freshman and sophomore classes as much as we can. And 3, I want to align it. I don't want Santa Fe High and Terra Linda doing 2 different things. If it makes sense for people, we want our teachers to be able to work together. We want our science teachers to be able to work with our math teachers. So if physics of the universe is a freshman course and that's aligning with algebra, that's one thing. So those are kind of my, non-negotiable things. China and I are all learning about science in there, and that's why we needed some help from people. But I do think educating people about what the next gen science standards are all about, what they mean, how they prepare students is super important because we're not doing it now. And so this change is hard for people to understand because they're thinking about chemistry the way chemistry was taught, and physics the way it was taught, and biology the way it was taught. And that's not, there's just so much to learn about the next gen science.
Thank you for that. So I appreciate that direction. I just have a couple of thoughts as well. Listening to you, Tyler, explain it, it sounds like we're teaching science the way that things were taught under No Child Left Behind, which is 20 years ago, really, when it was first come up. So we're very ancient, actually, when you think about how science changed a whole lot in the last 20 years. A couple of other, just add to the list of people to think about including. I don't know if Marin Promise is at the table, but they are huge advocates in our county for promoting equity in education. And I think that you might see if they have someone from science who would like to be involved in this discussion. Another one would be students from Tam High School, maybe another student trustee from the board there who is currently taking science under the new next gen science standards. And particularly at Tam High, they have students of color. So what do they think of the program? How have they done? Has this program shown that students' science achievement has improved and kept as well the high standards that Tam High School District has in science for their students? So I think those might be some other people I'd add on to what was suggested earlier this evening. So, but thank you, it's very exciting. We have one more question over here.
Yeah, just not trying to drag out the conversation too much longer. I'm just curious, since I haven't researched the next gen science standards, so I don't know very much about it. Could you tell me what the logic behind doing physics of the universe freshman year with algebra 1 math instead of doing it, say, junior year when you have a higher level math and can go into higher level physics, which might translate better into like going into an AP course later on?
That is the exact kind of question that we're actually having the departments wrestle with. So if you want to join, let me know and I can bring you to the meetings. And so some districts choose physics of the universe first for this reason. Physics can be a very conceptual, experiential opportunity for kids where they're actually doing science. And that might make kids, or students, I should say, more excited about science and more engaged in science, which might lead them to take more science classes down the road. Your observation is spot on, though. Whatever course we have at freshman year is going to be a freshman level course, which means it won't be as rigorous as a sophomore year course, and it won't be as rigorous as a junior year course. So depending on where you put those courses, we're going to have to design the biology course differently if it's a freshman year or a sophomore year course. Or if we do physics of the universe, it's going to be different in freshman year versus junior year. The challenge that we have in Santa Fe City Schools is that we're only asking for a 2-year graduation requirement. So whatever that third year option is, we might see 30% of our students not take that course. So which of those 3 courses do we want to roll the dice on and say, okay, we're okay with 30% of our kids not taking chemistry or biology or physics? So there's kind of a pro and a con, right? Do we want all kids to take physics, or do we want 60 to 70% of kids to take physics? Or do we want to change the graduation requirement, which I think is another bigger conversation. So I don't have a good answer for you, but I do know that the districts that we've looked at and the research that I've read so far, there's a lot of research pushing for physics first. There's very little research that I found pushing for biology first.
Interesting. Okay, we'll take one more question here, and then we're going to move on to our next item.
They're really passionate about this.
Yes.
My question is, biology and chemistry go hand in hand. They're 2 very similar courses, and you need both of them to be able to fully do. So why just add physics in there and biology? Why not have like 2 courses that are somewhat similar?
Another really good question. So the physics first research that I've read so far actually supports a belief that Physics is foundational to both biology and to chemistry. So to have a conceptual understanding of physics first helps you do better in chemistry, then helps you do better in biology, or vice versa. And then to something that I'm hearing underlying all three of your comments is that I actually want the really, really rigorous physics course too. You know what I'm saying? I don't want just conceptual physics that's based in Algebra 1. I kind of want the physics like college level physics. And that's where we would have to design something that allowed students to take AP physics junior year. So if it was a student that took physics of the universe freshman year, they should be able to take AP physics their junior year, so they could kind of go into a physics profession later on.
All right. Well, very exciting work that you're doing, Tyler, and we look forward to you coming back and hearing how the conversations went over the next few months. So we are going to move on to, we have two more items. I wonder if we could what do you think of taking a break at this point? Or should we, are the next two items, we get through those and then we'll get into them?
Let's do this super quick.
Okay, so we have two items left and then we'll take a break, and then I'm looking at Bob Marcucci because then after we come back from the break, we'll be talking about budget and finances. Okay, so our next, so thanks very much to Tyler. Our next item up is the approval of the Cal 200 PE certification report. Stephanie Close.
Hi, everyone. So we bring to you guys twice a year the certification of our PE minutes. And so this is kind of part of the regular board process for our elementary schools. And we have sheets for each month from every school, from every teacher, as well as PE schedules posted on our websites. And so we are bringing this tonight to you guys to certify.
Thank you. I will note this is a result of a lawsuit a few years ago that required schools to document their PE minutes at the elementary level. So thank you for that. Are there any questions? See if there's any public comment. We have none in the room.
Seeing none.
None online. And this will be, is this in action item at this moment? Acceptance of the PE certification report. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the Cal 200 PE certification report.
I'll second.
Okay, moved by trustee Daly, seconded by trustee Martel Dow to approve the certification report. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So, and we have one trustee who has stepped out of the room for a moment. So we'll make a note of that. And the next item, thank you so much for that, Stephanie. The next item is also yours, a decision to relinquish the California Department of Education State Preschool Program contract.
Great, thank you. So we have talked some about this, and we have made the hard decision to recommend that we relinquish the CDE California State Preschool Program contract beginning next school year. And this really is a decision and a recommendation on our part to really focus on transitional kindergarten. We have found that almost all of the students we currently serve in our preschool programs are actually going to be TK or kindergarten eligible. We are primarily serving 4-year-olds, and so we are recommending that we relinquish this contract at this time so we can really focus our energies at this point on transitional kindergarten.
This is, so any questions from the board? Yes, trustee Daly.
Thanks, Stephanie, for bringing this item, and I totally understand it makes sense that we have to do this. I know that we have some staff that have been staffing the preschool program. Do we know if they, I know that there are certain certification standards for transitional kindergarten. Do we know if any of them will be able to transition into those positions, or is it not possible because of the standards?
So it's really a case by case. We have there are 6 people who work in our state preschool programs, 4 of whom are Santa Fe City Schools employees. Both myself and Assistant Superintendent Baer have worked or talked with all of them directly because it does look really different for each one of them depending on their certifications as far as their opportunities for next year for working in our transitional K and or in other programs in Santa Fe City Schools. But we are actively engaged in those conversations.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the board? So we'll see if we have any public comment on this. I'm seeing none in the room. We'll see if anybody raises their hand to comment.
Seeing none.
Okay, so we'll close that public comment time. We'll see if there is we need a roll call vote for this.
Do we need a motion?
Right, first we need a motion. Yes, is there a motion?
I move to relinquish the California Department of Education, California State Preschool Program contract.
Okay, and is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Moved by Vice President Martel Dow, seconded by Trustee Palma to relinquish the contract. And it's a roll call vote. So Trustee Martin?
Aye.
Trustee Daly? Aye. Trustee Palma? Vice President Martel Dow?
Aye.
I am an aye as well. That matter passes unanimously. And we are now going to take a, where are we? 8:30. We'll take a 10-minute break. It's been a long night. And we will be back for the budget report. Thank you so much. Let us know when we're on mute.
You're unmuted.
Okay, I'm going to call the meeting back to order after our short break. And our next agenda item is item 10.6, approval of the annual financial audit reports. We have one for the elementary district and one for the high school district. So let's do this one and then we'll do the audit report for the bonds.
Sounds good, thank you. Good evening, everybody. We have, to provide some context, every September, we bring to the board for approval the unaudited actuals. And from September until this time, we've been working with our auditors from NIGRO and NIGRO to audit those actuals. And so they have provided us with a report for both the elementary district and the high school district. And we have Peter Glenn, lead accountant for NIGRO and NIGRO that works with our team here to provide some highlights for the audit reports. So I'll hand it over to Peter for his presentation.
Just a moment, I'm not ready for that. Peter, you will be able to start your video and unmute yourself in just a moment. Looks like you are. Yep.
Hello, good evening.
Hello,
Thank
Peter.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for that introduction, Bob. So as Bob said, I am with the audit firm NIGRO, and we have completed our annual audit under the education code as is required. And we did it for both the elementary school and the high school district. So just I'll kind of touch on some of the highlights without going into a ton of detail, because each report's about 100 pages long, and I know from being here in the last few minutes, you were already talking about how long your meeting had been. So I'm going to try to help you out, move this along. But the audit has to have certain elements, and we audit it under a certain set of standards, certain set of criteria. So I wanted to bring that up. So generally accepted audit standards is kind of our Bible, if you will, without sounding unsecular. The government audit standards are also consulted. Then we have uniform administrative requirements for federal awards. And then we follow the guide for annual audits put out by CDE, K through 12 audit guide. So those are kind of those four standards that we use. And then because of those, we issue really our audit report, our auditor's opinion, and then we issue 3 additional reports. So the first report is an opinion based on your financial statements, and that basically says, okay, based on your unaudited actuals, making sure that the presentation of the financials are in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles or GAAP. So we work with the district to make sure the presentation is correct, and that's really the reports that you have before you there in PDF format. And then we issue reports on internal control over financial statements and compliance, a report on compliance under federal for each federal program, and then again, as I said, a report that is under the K through 12 audit guide. So the audit, what it does in a nutshell, really, it provides independent assurance. So you have someone who's got the skills, knowledge, and experience to go in and use the accepted audit procedures and then come out with a conclusion. So that's again what we've provided for you there for the elementary school district and for the high school district. So the highlights really for each, first of all, the opinion that we expressed was an unmodified opinion, and basically what that means is the financial statements in both cases present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the district. So that's a positive. As far as what that means is the financial highlights for the district. So if we were basically just to look at the general fund for each district, and again, this is as of June 30th of 2021, and I know you're about to jump into your second interim. So these numbers are going back to kind of where you started, right, the beginning of the year. But you've got increases in the general fund for both the elementary school district and the high school district. So revenues outpaced expenditures in both districts. And a lot of those dollars were tied to restricted programs, as would probably be expected in most cases, with all the federal funding and all the state funding that came in. So most of those dollars are kind of spoken for, if you will. For the elementary school district, there was still $7.7 million in unassigned fund balance, and that's and then in the high school district, there's about $0.8 million in unassigned out of the $10.4 million in general fund balance. So that's kind of your highlights there. Another item of note I wanted to point out, and that was a new GASB pronouncement. So there was a new GASB pronouncement, GASB 87, and that defined or redefined what is considered a fiduciary fund. That might not sound like something that would really affect a school district, but actually ASBs were considered fiduciary funds. So now your ASB is accounted for in a special revenue fund, similar to like your child development fund or your cafeteria fund. So you might notice on page 6 of the elementary school district report, and similarly on page 6 of your high school district report, there's a new fund that appears there, and it's called the Student Activity Fund. So that might have been something that you're familiar seeing somewhere else in the report, but it's actually, like I said, a special revenue fund. So that's an item I thought might be worth bringing to your attention. So again, just in summary, in both districts, so we gave an unmodified opinion, so that's a clean opinion. And so you can have confidence moving forward as you look forward and you make your projections that, hey, these amounts have been vetted, and you can, have the independent assurance as you go forward with those, future projections going forward. So we'd like to kind of wrap things up on the LEA side for now. And again, I'd like to thank the district and their cooperation. We did kind of a hybrid approach this year. We did some work where we actually came out to the district and worked kind of adjacent to the room you're in right now, I believe. And we did some on-site work. We also did a bit of distance auditing, if you will, where we were doing remote work. So, again, we appreciate the district working with us there. It's not the easiest way to do an audit, but under the circumstances, I think the district did a nice job in getting us the documents. We have a secure website where they're able to load things up in a secure manner so that we can look at the documents and go through them there. So we appreciate that extra bit of, scanning and things that the district had to do that might have been outside the department. I know everybody's really busy in these challenging times, so we appreciate the cooperation of Bob and his team. So if there's any questions on any of the LEA reports.
Okay, thank you so much for that. I do want to note to our other trustees, the last section in both report is the findings section and the recommendations section. And typically we don't have many comments in them, and similarly this time we don't have many comments in this. We have pretty minor suggestions or recommendations of what to do. Next year, I think the attendance one is purely COVID related, so that's different. And then a couple of items I know that our staff is, oh, okay, good to know, and we'll take care of those. So I'll throw that out there, but I'll see if anybody has any questions about these two audits.
No news is good news.
No news. Okay. And these are up for approval, correct? So do you need separate motions on these?
I believe we do.
Okay. I'll take a motion on the elementary.
So moved.
Second.
I'll second.
Okay. Moved by trustee Daly and seconded by Vice President Martel Dow to accept the audit for the, let's see, my own right.
Unaudited assets, actual, sorry, the actual.
Yeah.
The actual.
Right one, the annual financial
One of
audit
those lines.
report for the elementary district. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that was unanimous. And now we'll have the same, a motion for the high school district.
A motion to accept the.
Go ahead,
No, you
Lucia.
can-
No, go Lucia.
I thought you were talking to me. A motion to accept the audit for the high school district.
And I'll second.
Okay, so moved by Vice President Martel Dow and seconded by trustee Daly to accept the audit for the annual financial audit report for the high school district. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that passes unanimously. Thank you so much. And now we get to move on to the second interim budget report. No, I take it back. The audits for the bonds.
Yes.
Yes,
So
okay.
along with the district's financials, NIGRO also does an audit of our annual
Nice.
Measure A and Measure B general obligation bond report. And just before moving on, I just want to really express gratitude to Marie and our team, Chris Pozadel, and Peter for his patience working with us as new folks to some of this, and just a lot of work went into this, and I really appreciate it. And also I want to thank Dan Zeich for working with Peter and providing everything that was needed for the next item here, measures A and B. So take it away, Peter.
Thank you. Okay, so in a similar manner, we perform an audit of the Measure A for the elementary school and a Measure B for the high school. In that we use the government auditing standards and generally accepted audit standards in this process. So we zero in specifically on those on those funds, that bond fund for both the building fund, and zero in on those transactions. So in that report, it's a shorter report. It shows you the financials, and then we render an opinion on those transactions and cycles and line items there. And so in a similar way, we have an unmodified opinion, which is a clean opinion on those amounts there. So again, the ending fund balance, so basically you look at your your Measure A, you had about $8 million or so in there at the end of the year in fund balance, and then in the high school, you had about 50.3 million in there. Expenditures for the year, the high school was more active, so you had about 14.8 in total expenditures for the elementary school, and the high school was about 42.8 million in expenditures, and that's on page 5 of both reports. So the high school really saw some activity. So what we do when we do our performance audit, we pull a representative sample. So for example, for the high school, we tested about 16.9 million in expenditures, and we do a job or a site walk. So we went to Madrone Continuation, and then we observed a new central kitchen at San Raf High School. So we usually try to get out to one of the sites to kind of do a little walk around tour and see if we can kind of see it in action. So and then at the elementary school, we went to Venetia Valley, and there we tested about 10.5 million at the elementary school. So there were no exceptions when it came to any of the testing of the bond funds, their usage, the change orders involved, if there were any, they were all under the 10%. Any contract bidding all met the requirements. Any salaries that were paid out of the bond funds, we made sure that they were consistent with Attorney General Opinion 04110, which allows for some of those types of costs to go towards, bond measure funds. So clean audits on both measure A and B. If there's any questions?
Okay, so to be clear, when you say clean audits on both of them, there are no findings that you made?
Correct,
Okay.
correct, yeah, no findings.
I'll note in the board report, it's not listed as an attachment at the top, and it's not listed as, attachment on the side, but the two documents are attached at the bottom of the agenda item online, so.
In the background.
In the background, right. So we have those two reports, and thank you for that. I see they're going to go to our oversight committee as well, so they will have the benefit of looking at these. Are there any questions from the board, the trustees?
Just a quick comment. I just thank you for doing this assessment as well, especially as we have just voted to try to get a new bonds passed. I think it's really important to show that we are being good stewards of the bond funding that we already have. And so I think no finding is very good news, and hopefully will be reassuring to the voters that we're trying to convince to vote yes on our new bond measures. So thank you for that.
Okay, thank you for that. Is that a motion?
I move that we accept the audit for Measure A. I guess we'll do them separate again, right? Or can they be combined?
I would lean on
Separate.
folks more experienced in those items than I, but.
Separate, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I move that we accept the findings of the Measure A.
So I have second. I'll second.
Okay. Moved by trustee Daly, seconded by Vice President Martel Dow to accept to approve the bond audit report for the San Rafael Elementary District. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that matter passes unanimously, and I'll look for a motion on the high school.
In a similar way, I would like to move that we approve the audit report for Measure B.
I'll second that.
Okay, moved by trustee Daly, seconded by Vice President Martel Dow to approve the audit report for Measure B for the high school district. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? That passes unanimously. Congratulations to the team, to you on the screen here. Thanks so much for your help on it, and then to our team here at San Rafael City Schools. I know they're not all here, but we know that they've all worked hard. So, thank you.
Peter. Thank you.
Thank you, good night.
Okay, good
Thank you
night.
so much.
And now we move on to the second interim report for the elementary district.
Yes, we will be doing a presentation for both the elementary and high school district combined, like we usually do, and I'll wait for Christina to pull that up. There it is. You can go to the next slide, Christina, right off the bat. So just to provide some context, budgets are living, breathing things that, that change, this second interim is really our 21-22 budget up until January 30th. And, the moment it turned 12:01 on January, or the next day, right, the budget shifts, right? It's constantly moving and shifting. And so this is really represents a snapshot in time of our current year's budgets. And so the changes to revenues, expenditures, and assumptions all change over time. And this really shows where we are, right? I like to always, this is sort of the benchmark. We're at the second interim. We did the first interim in December. We adopted the budget back in June. In September, we'll be coming back to you with the closing of the books and the unaudited actuals. So this is where we are in the cycle, while we're also planning and preparing for the 22-23 budget, right? So it's sort of this spiral or sort of double helix of budgeting that happens. So that's the context there. And I have Marie Enrio, our Director of Fiscal Services, here with us tonight, and I'm going to ask her to come on up just so that she can chime in and answer questions and fill in, you know, anything that I forget, which I'm sure there may be some things. Next slide, please, Christina. So I always like to start with that slide before that shows where we are in the cycle, and then this slide here. And because it's always important reminder that we are one SRCS community, but we are actually two districts. And especially for Trustee Martin, this is important for you to know. And those two districts are funded in two different ways. And that adds a layer of complexity to our district and to our fiscal processes that most other districts in California don't have. So the elementary district is funded through what we call LCFF, Local Control Funding Formula. The state has a calculation of the funding that they think we should have in order to serve our students. Our property taxes don't meet that level, and so the state comes back and backfills that so that we are funded at the level that we need to be. Current revenues for the elementary district, taking all of that into consideration, is $47.7 million. Our high school district is what we call community funded. Local control funding formula is still calculated by the state, but our property taxes that we receive for the high school district exceed that calculation, and the district gets to keep the excess. And so you can see for the high school district, the 29.3 million, which is the state's calculation, and we exceed that here at second interim by close to $2 million. So sometimes we say, how deep into community funded are you? That answer to that would be close to $2 million.
And Bob, I want to point out that I made a typo, and there's a base grant. It's the sum of 29.3 for high school. 29.3 plus 1.9 doesn't equal 29.3, it equals 31.2. So the total is definitely 31.2.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if you look into the financials, you will find the 31.2 in the LCFF line.
Important to note though, just because the high school district is funded as a community funded district does not mean that we're not held accountable for the utilization of a certain percentage of funds, supplemental and concentration funds, on specific kinds of students. So that's a distinction that I think needs to be made. This next slide is really showing the elementary district, and from first interim to now at second interim, what are the major changes that have occurred? And you can see in terms of revenues, it's really an increase in Title I revenues, and some educator effectiveness grant dollars, $814,000, and expanded learning opportunities program dollars of about $1.6 million. So the net in terms of revenues is $2.9 million more than we were accounting for at first interim through grants, right? In terms of expenditures, mainly, Marie, I'm going to let you talk a little bit about the classified salaries and to provide some input there.
Correct. I don't know if you recall, and I think the title is wrong here. The title says gap analysis between budget and first interim. We are actually between first interim and second interim.
Yeah.
I'm going to be here correcting every single slide. The numbers are correct. Okay. Here I want to point out that last time I talked to you, I was mentioning the fact that I was not super comfortable with, I had not reconciled in a happy way my classified expenses between high school and elementary school at first interim. And that resulted in about $400K of expenses that we were overspending in high school plus benefits that were in high school instead of being in elementary school. And that was a result of the 66 employees that are, some of us are here in the room, that are split between high school and elementary school. And the accounting system used to be able to actually support that gymnastic, if you want, and it doesn't really support that anymore. So that's something I discovered at the time of first interim and asked for help to MCOE. So that's something we've been spending a lot of time getting it correct, obviously, and changing gears so that next year we are going to account for that differently, respecting the same idea of splitting the individuals, but not going through the same way we have done in the past. So that's why we are correcting salaries for that on the classified side. And on the certificated, there is definitely a bit more cost due to the fact that we have more subs. And as the subs are coming, we can't absorb all those costs. There is a little bit of an added cost there. We're not adding really headcount really during the year. It's really more the sub impact. And that's, yes, I talked to you about the correction between high school and elementary school. The rest is just what you would expect to see during the year. You would expect to see more expenses, like new expenses coming during the year. The rest is I would say, more normal business.
And earlier I had spoken to the fact that we're two districts funded two different ways, and that adds a complexity. And here's an example, that the twinned employees is a complexity that is difficult, and I think many of the I don't want to call them errors, but often when we dig a little deeper on things that we can't reconcile, it comes back to the same thing, that we're having to twin these employees. And so the county office is very interested in untwinning, and Marie and I are working with, Marie is very interested as well. And we're working with the county office to determine what does that look like, how do we do it, how quickly can we do it, when's the right time. So we're working through that. Let's go ahead to the high school district. So high school district, in terms of additional revenues, again, additional Title I and III revenues, that educator effectiveness grant, and a wellness grant that we've accounted for since first interim now to second interim. Again, you see in terms of expenditures, those twinned employees, both in salaries and benefits. And we've had some extra expenditures related to COVID books, maintenance and operations, bond measure study, and an additional contribution for special education. But you can see net more about $1 million above where we were at first interim. Anything to add on that, Marie?
No, I would say that, as I mentioned at the first interim, I spent a lot of time on elementary school because we were very worried about where we were going with elementary school. So this time, when I did the work, I started with high school. So I feel very strongly that we have the right number, which I was not super good about. I didn't feel good about it in first interim. The second interim is definitely solid. And those employees that were those employee costs that were definitely muddy in the first interim are cleaned up. So I think we're good to go for high school for the end of the year based on those projections.
Next slide. So back to the elementary district and some historical and projected reserves. And I think we talked a little bit about this at first interim, but you see that large spike for 21-22, and that's really because of the recognition of a lot of the COVID funds this year, whereas in the past we were still sort of getting some guidance about how do we account for those. And then you can see projected in next fiscal year and in 23-24, you see that light green COVID dollars sort of goes away. And you can see the spending down in some ways of our reserves, but still very much a healthy, stable reserves in terms of being able to meet our fiscal obligations in the 2 out years. Is there anything that you would add to this, Marie?
Not to this one. Let's talk more when we show the comparison.
Yeah. I'm really excited about slide 8, but we're not gonna get there yet.
Slow down.
Slow down. So the high school district, very similar. You can see the spike in 21-22 because of the recognition of the COVID dollars. And then and correct me if I'm wrong, Marie, but this sort of assumes that our expenditures remain the same over the 2 out years. And so you can see the COVID funds going away and the spending down of the reserves slightly. Anything you would want to add to this, Marie?
When you say that the expenses are the same, but I'm calculating an increase of cost, like the California index also, the level of expenses is the same, the actual cost increase, right? So that takes that into consideration, yeah.
Next slide. Marie, I don't want to steal your thunder on this slide, so I'm going to let you go for it, even though I'm so excited about it, but please.
For the one who have known me for a long time, there is like charts out there, so I'm very excited in general. So this is my attempt at demonstrating to you and talking to you about the impact of the potential change of calculation of the LCFF that has been discussed in Sacramento, and that all of us, including Gina at JLAC, we have heard about that a lot. Like, okay, some change is coming. What could it look like for us? So it wouldn't change anything for high school, but let me demonstrate a little bit to you what it could look like for elementary school. And I want you to see that I'm actually projecting up to 25, 26 here, which is not what you see in the multi-year projection. Those are not official numbers, but they are actually numbers that when we are doing projection with a county, we don't do 2 years. We actually do 5 years. We don't publish them. So those are not published numbers, but they are the working numbers that Bob and I are working on, when we are doing our projection. So what you should see at the top is that you see the green column on the left chart. The green is a proposed revenue, right, with a new formula. And the new formula, what it would do is, instead of taking the last 2 years ADA average, it would take the last 3 years. What it does is that if you are in declining enrollment, it provides a little bit of a buffer. It gives us a little bit of time to land on our feet. What I want you to see, that's why I actually showed you 5 years, because with my pointer here, in year 5, in the year 5 out there, the revenue is actually the same between the blue and the green column. So this is not going to give us much money for a long time. It just provides a little bit more money for the next 2-3 years, right? It just smooths the landing. It smooths the cliff, the cliff that everybody has been talking about. And you see that very clearly. The cliff, you may not see it in the revenue, but you see it in the reserve. So what I showed you here on the reserve, and there are different levels of reserve. I'm only showing you one number here, is what we call the reserve on top of the 3%. So that's really the additional, the good stuff. I'm not showing you the rest, because this is where the good stuff is happening. If you look at the blue right now, we're at 16.3%. Okay, this is the first year, 21-22. In the current scenario, we would be in 5 years with like my projection, we would be around 5%. You see the little 5% in 5 years here? If Gavin Newsom goes his way, and if the new calculation is approved by Sacramento, we would be at 15%. So it's actually a change between, it would be like from $4 million to $11 million. That's significant. So you see, when you look at the revenue, it's like it looks, 5-6 million there just go straight in the reserve. Assuming we are not changing our expenses. I didn't say, hey, great, you have $5 more million. Let's just go dancing and add $3 million of expenses. I didn't do that. I left the revenue, calculated the same way, and I just played with exactly the same level of expenses just to demonstrate to you what is being talked about in Sacramento, which is this exciting thing that maybe we are going to change the methodology for calculating the CFF. And then we go back to more normal, right? Because you see the revenue, it gets back to the same as it is right now. So that's not a solution to everything, but that's definitely smoothing the enrollment decline for the majority of the Californian district. Does it help? Kind of seeing what it looked like for us here. Okay?
And I know we're not supposed to ask questions, but one.
But I wanna go ahead. Not them anyway.
Just
Now
while we're
is
on
the
this.
time. Now is the
Well,
time.
because while we're on this slide,
Yeah.
so this is Newsom's proposal. So this is the
Yeah.
governor's proposal, which is the 3-year average.
Right.
But there's another proposal, which is the enrollment. And so
I was gonna ask you
Marie,
about
I hate to make you do more work, but
Yeah.
I think
I would love
that
to see that.
we should, and I think we should assume it based on when you have to report enrollment, because I agree with you, we should not be
Yeah,
doing
right.
different point in time enrollment, even though we know in our school district, we have people coming throughout the year that are newcomers. But in order to certify that enrollment data, I think we should base it on what we have
Yeah.
current in law, and then see what that calculation would
But
look
what they
like for
have not
that.
said, Gina, what they have not said is how much money you're getting per kid at the enrollment level. They give it to you, the current, all of this is based on $11,000 as a
Right,
$11,000 per student, ADA. They have not told anybody what it would look like if it was enrollment.
It's a fair point.
That's.
I mean, if it were the same, a
If it were
simple
the
way would
same,
be
yeah.
adding
If we
5%.
Then
Then
we're
you add-
assuming the
then you would
same.
have, you would have 5% because we are ADA kind of 95%. So you would you divide that by 95% and then that would be that. But I have not read that in the legislation either. They are getting very, very vague about the actual number.
Yes.
And let's be clear, we will take either one.
Yeah, you just, yes, please send us.
Anything is better than a cliff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you
The
for that.
enrollment is not going to do anything for the cliff. That's
Yes.
managing the cliff.
I have a question about the percent reserve fund, because I know that with the Prop 98 guarantee, there was a possible, so what's happening with that?
So we're looking at,
I should probably clarify my question, because there are people here who might not know what that means, sorry. So with the Prop 98 guarantee, it means that we can only have a 10% reserve, and our reserve is far greater than 10% currently. And so what happens now with our reserve that is above that 10%?
so there's a couple of things that we're looking at. One is a way to look at some of the huge projects that we have. For example, this summer, we're wanting to make sure that we do the roofs at Bahia Vista, at Davidson, the 20s, the 30s wing and the annex. And so that would be a good example of committing funds, taking from those reserves and saying, we are going to commit those funds to a certain project. And we're in the midst of identifying what some of those projects might be, or projects that might be in the future. For example, redoing the turf on a football field. There's a certain amount of money you want to make sure that you have so that by the time the life of that field runs out, we're able to, and that's a high school example, but it's things like that, right? So that's one thing that we're looking at, is what projects are out there in the elementary district that we want to commit to. The other one is to create a stabilization reserve. So any amount of reserves that are over that 10% get put into a stabilization account and are able to be held in that account for sort of like as a rainy day fund. So we're looking at working with some guidance from FICMAT and from our county office in terms of how they've handled this, and we'll be making some decisions about that probably in as we build in the budget for next school year.
Okay, thank you. Let's see if there are any more
Yeah.
slides.
Yes.
Yes.
Exciting as well.
Yes. So this is really just to show the COVID funds and some planning around how we're expending those funds. And so an example would be when you can see that the stairs kind of going up, and that sort of large step in the light green there is 21-22. That's when we recognize the majority of the COVID funds. So you can see we're not getting any more of those funds, but we've identified some expenditures that cross over fiscal years so that we can sort of maintain things like the counselors over 3 years, or in the high school district, the campus supervisors and community liaisons over a series of years, so that by the time we get to the 23-24 school year, we've expended all the funds, and then there's gonna be some difficult decisions that we have to make, I think, at that point, about what we keep, what the priorities are. But it's really hard to predict now what we're gonna be thinking and feeling in 23-24. Yes, Jim?
And I just want to add, in addition, one of the things that I'm asking Bob to do, and he's put some of it in there, is our grant funds. I mean, we have the $4 million in wellness grants, that's gonna end. We're going after this community schools grant, that's a $200,000 planning grant, and if we get it, a $500,000 implementation grant. There's a teacher residency program, that's I mean, all these things are great and we're gonna take advantage of it. But in addition to the COVID funds, there's just a lot of grant funds, and they're all gonna end right around that 23-24. So I know we're all aware of that, but it just makes it hard because we're not gonna not spend it, right? And we're not gonna not hire counselors and have wellness coordinators and things, but those grants aren't always extended. So I don't know.
Based on the number of, I think we're on a pace at about a new grant per week.
Yeah.
So
That's why I asked Bob to put we have the dual immersion grant thing. I mean, there's about
the
10 of them
community
that
schools
are
grant.
they're pretty substantial.
My estimation is if you just take COVID funds by themselves, it's about 17 different sources of funds. You add on all the grants that we have as well. I mean, I'm thinking we're in the mid-20s in terms of different grants that have to be reported on and tracked and followed, and there's accountability, and then you have 2 districts on top of that. So it's complex, but I think that's one of the great things about our district is that we do go for those grants and we provide those services to our students and families. So I think Jim would like us to come back to you at some point with a more detailed look at our COVID funds, and we certainly will do that.
And when you guys come back with a more detailed look of the COVID funds, especially the ones around mental health, I do want us to have a larger discussion about how to continue that programming in the future, because I would love to think that we will have solved mental health in 2 years. I just don't think it's gonna happen, and I think, what we saw earlier today with the wellness center at TL, we can't take away those services. So we need to figure out a way to continue them even after that startup funding has gone away, so.
That's the real work ahead for us. Since a lot of our revenues, especially in the elementary district and in are based on enrollment, and in the high school district, that calculation is based on enrollment. Just some of the changes, this is really speaking more to elementary. So since first interim, we've added 38 students in our elementary district, TK to 8. We've added 26 students in our high school, so that's good. We want to sort of trend in that direction. The high school district, obviously, those added students don't bring more revenues, but in our elementary district they do, and we want those kids. A quick snapshot of universal pre-K or TK. As of last Friday, we had 141 students registered for TK. That includes 5 inter-district transfer students that have registered. Our 22-23 projection, we've been using 150 as where we think we're gonna land. So you can see that we're already pretty close to that, and so that's a good thing. We've committed to having 1 TK class at every elementary site, and in terms of how that relates to our budget for next school year, that's an additional 3 to 4 certificated teachers. So as we're right sizing in some ways in our elementary district, we're also adding TK teachers, and not only teachers, but because of the 12-to-1 student to adult ratio, it's about 7 to 8 additional instructional assistants. So important to keep in mind. In kindergarten, as of last Friday, we had 437 students registered. And you can see the trend there from 2019 to 20 to 2021. So we're a little bit behind the pace that we were at in 2021. But keep in mind that kindergarten enrollment will continue over the next 5 months, and we hope that that we'll see more kindergarten students joining our district. And we're projecting a total of 22 kindergarten classes across the district, which is very similar to where we're at this year. So we'll just keep an eye on our enrollment as we go forward and make good decisions based on that. Next slide and last slide here. So just some key messages. A significant amount of reconciliation continues in both districts, and I have to give Marie Henriot a lot of credit for her just dogged, efforts to just make sure that things are cleaned up, that we are able to track our revenues and expenditures in a way that I don't know that we have before. And I think each time we sort of go through this process, we get a better and better understanding of our true fiscal health. So that's a great thing, and Marie's really excellent at that. Like you've seen, we've positioned ourselves well with healthy reserves to meet fiscal obligations, this year and 2 subsequent years. A lot depends on what the legislature does in terms of what those out years look like. And so we talked about the decision on allowing the 3-year average, the rolling average for ADA would be kind of a game changer for us in terms of how we get from, the top of the mesa to the bottom of the cliff. And, we've talked a lot about the elementary district and the deficit spending, and I'm really seeing the solution for that as a combination of things. So it's a reduction of some certificated staff based on our enrollment, but it's also the addition of, a whole phasing in of a whole new grade level, which brings ADA, which brings revenues, which allows us to hire the teachers to serve those students. So it's a sort of a balancing act. And then, we've had some increased state revenues from earlier projections, and we'll see, if things pan out the way that they did in those comparison slides that Marie provided for us. We could find ourselves in a better situation than we're in now. Anything you'd want to add to that, Marie? Okay. So we are self-certifying as positive. I do that every morning in the mirror. I self-certify that I can meet, the obligations today and the next 2 days. We were able to meet our obligations, and that's a positive certification. And so we welcome any questions that you have or any comments, and we would ask for approval of the second interim for both the elementary and the high school district.
All right, so we'll take the elementary first, item 10.8. Are there any more questions from the, yes?
One suggestion, I think as a follow-up to the conversation we had with Senator Mike McGuire at when we had our JLAC Legislative Advocacy Day, I think we should do a meeting with him and show him that slide, because I think that actually could be really helpful as they're trying to work out which fix to do. Yeah. So I'd be happy to work maybe with Marie and Bob on scheduling a follow-up with maybe his staff, but also maybe with the senator himself, and because he's gonna need data, he's gonna need things to show.
That's real.
And we're one of the only districts in Marin that is local controlled, so we're sort of the local example on why this would make an impact. So let's just a suggestion to work together on scheduling that.
We would welcome that for sure.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Gina, for following up on that. I think that's, he needs to hear from the school districts, and he understands our language here. Is there a motion on the elementary district?
I move that we approve the elementary school second interim report.
I'll second. I'll second.
Okay, moved by trustee Daly, seconded by Vice President Martel Dow to approve the Elementary School District Budget Second Interim Report. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That matter carries. Now we'll look at 10.9 for the high school district. Any questions or comments here? Okay, a motion?
Move to approve the San Rafael City High School District budget, interim, second budget.
I second. Hi. Moved by Vice President Martell Downs, seconded by Trustee Martin to approve the second interim report for the San Rafael High School District. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, that matter carries unanimously. We are now moving into discussion action. The first item up is the first reading to review a revision to Administrative Regulation 5125.2, and that would be Jason. Good evening again. Welcome back.
Good evening. Thank you for having me back. I'm still with you.
Yeah, we're still here. Keep going.
That is a hard act to follow. Well done. And so I get the privilege of talking about withholding grades and diplomas. So that is this administrative regulation. It's the first reading of AR 5125.2, withholding grades, diplomas, and transcripts. And really what this one's about is if we have students who willfully destroy property, create damage, or do not return district property, that parents may then be responsible for those damages. And until they pay those damages or otherwise rectify those damages, the district can withhold grades, diplomas, and transcripts from those students. That does not apply to homeless or foster youth. And in order for a district to withhold those records, they have to notify the family in writing of the alleged misconduct. And the student is also afforded due process just as students under expulsion would as well. So under the expulsion procedures that the district has in place. And that's really at the crux of this regulation. There's language in here that talks about, if we as the receiving district receive a student from a different district who is under this withholding pattern, then we shall uphold the previous district's withholding of grades, transcripts, and diplomas until we are notified that that previous district has withdrawn or rescinded that. And same for us, once we learn that a student of ours that's under this withholding of records moves out of our district, then we are duty bound to notify the new district and then notify the family in writing that the new district will enforce that rule as well.
Okay.
Hopefully we never have to enforce this, but that is the update.
That's right. Thank you so much. So the way it works when we have these items come before us, we have two readings. So we read it once at one meeting, and then it comes back to us at a later meeting, and that second time we vote on it. Sometimes we're asked to do it on an urgency basis, and we do first and second reading together. But the typical is separate accounts. These are also typically come as a result of state law, saying that the rules have changed at the state, and so our staff looks at it and they say, okay, we better change our policy to be in compliance. So there is sometimes a chance to make minor modifications. So if you see something that you have a question about, I encourage you to talk to Jason and say, can we say this instead or do that, or how do we address this situation? That might, I don't know that applies here, but I'm just giving you some background about how to look at these policies. And this is a first reading, so it will come back to us. Are there any questions for Jason on this one at this point? Thank you. Very good report. Thank you so much. We'll see you a couple of weeks on this one. The next item up is the approval of the receipt of donations to our school district. And I don't know if we'll get that up on the screen. We can look at it on our computers. And we have one donation of recycled wood boards for Taylor High School. at $310. So
Yes.
that's a good donation to Terralinda High School.
Yeah, from Pat O'Neill, who's the owner of Woody's Fences, which I can't imagine a better name for a fence company. And not surprisingly, he donated some wood, which is great for our programs that need that raw material so that kids can be creative. So thank you to Woody and Woody's Fences.
And so what we have done with this is we do have it on as a regular item so that we can do recognition of the community's various contributions. So with that, is there a motion?
I move to accept the contribution, to accept the donation from Moody's.
I'll second that.
Okay, moved by Vice
you.
President Martel Dow, seconded by Trustee Palma to approve Woody's Wood for Terralinda High. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? That matter carries. Tell them thank you so much.
That's right.
And then we have the last one, which is for us to discuss our representatives to various organizations. Everybody has a copy of the report that Marin put together for us, tracking our last time that we talked about this.
Thank you, Marina.
Yeah. So this is, so we do this annually, Carolina. We look at the different committees and we trade off, or we stick with the ones, we hold on to the ones we love. But with Nat2 gone, and we knew he was going, we decided to hold off on reviewing it this year, which we would typically do in December or January. So in this case, we'll take a look at these and see if you can see where Nat2's name is. And those are the ones for all of us to think about, is that something that we might want to take on? The other thing I'd put out as you're going through this list is if there's something you want to, open up for somebody else, that's fine. And then finally, it's always good to have a backup so that if you were unable to, for example, go to a meeting, you would know who to call and see if they could step in for you and go to the meeting for you. Or the two of you could go to the meetings, which I know DLAC has 2 trustees who go regularly. So with that, I'll open it up for someone to kick us off with their.
I'd like to start by requesting to remove myself from the Golden Dale liaison because
That's on
their appointments are
page 2.
Page 2.
Okay, page 2 in the
Yeah, their
middle.
meetings are way too early for me to attend.
Okay.
I also would like to remove myself from the CalFresh Task Force. It's not about what I had in mind. This is called the HILL collaboration or HILL meeting. Nothing to do with the school district.
Uh-huh.
Can we get rid of that one altogether?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree, because I was only part of that because I was hoping to have more CalFresh clinics brought to
Yeah, but
schools.
didn't
so-
happen.
Okay, it'll come off.
And I'd like to remove myself from the Together 2023 Equity Blueprint. I don't recall being invited to any of these meetings, and if I did, I missed it.
That's on the first page, second
The
from the
first
bottom.
page.
Is that committee still,
Yeah, that's not really it's not really a committee. So we don't ever, we just report to you guys regularly on, like we did tonight, right? So we don't have a committee that meets on that.
So then it shouldn't be part of
So
this
we'll take
list.
that
then.
one off?
Yeah, you can take it off.
It should be removed.
Thank you.
okay.
And I would say the same thing, just sorry to interrupt, the Mental Health Task Force Wellness Committee. We have wellness centers, but we don't have a committee that meets on
Then
that
remove
this
it.
year. So
Yeah.
that'd be another
Then
one
it's
that-
So should we remove it or should we consider for
Remove it.
next year?
Remove it.
I'll take it off, I'll take it.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else at this point, Marina?
No, I am staying with DLAC for now and listening to parents, working with parents.
Jim, on the bottom of the key initiatives one, so we've taken the first 2 off, and then on the second page, we have the parcel tax committee and the teacher leadership team. Are those still stay on, of course? Is there anything that you would add on at this point? or halfway through the second semester, but
I mean, there's the science,
There is a science
the
committee.
science committee.
Yeah, I mean, it was, first it started with ethnic studies, which that I've got done. So now the science is the only other major
okay,
curriculum.
so we'll add science committee to this. All right, does anybody else want to weigh in at this point about what they have, what they want to let go, or what they want, if they
I
want
think
to step
Carolina
in?
should say what she would like.
Yeah, I would love to hear what she wants to do, so see what if I can remove myself.
Oh, so-
Who's gonna back you up?
You have to be on a minimum of 10.
Yeah.
No.
No pressure, Carolina, you can change it too.
Well, before we do that, I just want to, so
proceed.
she knows what's open.
Yeah.
Does anybody else want to do what Marina did and sort of say this one is not working, I want to let it go right now?
Yeah. So,
Gina and Lucia.
so I have not participated in the promise, in the last page, we have the
Marine Promise?
the Marine Promise Partnership Council.
Have you heard about those meetings or?
I heard that they exist, but I have not been formally
Invited.
invited,
Oh, interesting.
so.
Because we are a member, so you should have
You're missing
been
out.
notified about their
So,
meetings.
I am,
But you're willing to let that one go?
I am, if there's
Okay.
another trustee who would like to
Okay.
take that on, I would willing to let that one go. I also would love, I think, now that we have Dan here, I think that meeting about the capital, let me
Capital
find it.
facilities.
Yeah, capital facility, sorry, so that's on the first page.
Third
So I
one
think
down.
Emily's invited me to those, but the scheduling is really difficult, so I will be happy to be an alternate for Gina, but we can coordinate to see if there's a meeting that you cannot make it or something like that, but I cannot be, I'm not the principal, it seems like we're both there, but I don't know. So it's just the scheduling is really hard.
Okay, how about you, Gina?
I think we already took off the mental health task
Yeah.
force. He already talked about the CalFresh task force. Everything else, are things that I generally try to go to. The only one that I have had a hard time going to is the Heads Up Foundation. So if someone else wanted to, maybe I could be a backup for that.
Okay.
It's on page 2.
Have you ever been to one of their meetings?
I have been to a couple of their meetings, but they tend to be at night, so it's hard with childcare.
And I, for that, I am, with the Heads Up Foundation, happy to see if somebody else would like to step up for that as well. And I do want
Who
to
could that
note
be?
that
Hello.
the Efficiency and Effectiveness Committee, it's on the last page. I am stepped down from that. I'm going because I think it's important for us to have somebody who's attending from our school district. It's at 7:30 in the morning, so it's
Wow.
That's very early in the
yeah,
morning.
I know. I don't know. MCOE
the
likes to
killer.
get up early.
They love 7:30 a.m. meetings.
Like 5 o'clock in the morning.
I know.
Yeah.
Jane.
Wow.
So anyways, I'll just throw that out there.
Linda, I can go to those too. I mean, I used to, but then you were going, so it's
Yeah.
not.
All right, well, I'll, question mark there, but we'll see what happens here. So, okay.
But Safe Routes
Your
never
turn.
contacted me, so I'd like to be removed from there
Oh,
too.
from Safe Routes, you're
Yeah.
off that one. Which is, at the top of page 3.
It's the third page, first one.
Okay. Yeah, so
That
actually the
shouldn't-
contact is Wendy Collins. And,
Yeah. I
so
don't know if she
whoever
was
wants to.
notified that, I have no idea what's going on.
I can get you in touch with Wendy.
What am I gonna do? Only if they meet, yeah,
It'll be, I think they meet in the afternoons
Yes.
after
Yeah.
school with parents, so.
Usually
I can try it.
5
Yeah,
o'clock.
5 o'clock?
Yeah.
Do you know what day? Oh, I can, yeah,
You wanna keep it?
Marina.
Okay.
let me find out a contact and see if I
And I
can
will
meet
get you
their
in touch
schedule.
with Wendy.
If not, yeah,
And-
I'll
and
stay
Bob, you go to
tentatively.
them?
I did.
Oh, okay, well, all right, got
I
it.
can connect you.
Yeah, just to take a look at their schedule,
Dave
see if
and
I can
Wendy,
make it.
right? They're,
Yeah, Wendy, yeah.
Wendy's the main one. Okay, good. All right.
I have just,
Oh, wait.
yeah, I also have not been invited to the teacher leadership team. Sorry, Carolina, which is in the second page, like I'm looking at this like,
Yeah, that kind of morphed, right? So that was, it was like secondary professional development, which we didn't really have, and we just started up that teacher leadership team thing.
okay.
So we are And I think Linda came to the last one.
Yeah, I'd
We
be
all send those
interested
to
in
you.
doing that one if you want to let it go.
Or you can vote.
Yeah,
You can
I
vote.
want to be an
Yeah.
alternate.
You
I
can
could be an
vote.
alternate, I could be an
Okay.
alternate,
Okay.
yes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no, then Carolina
wants to
No,
go.
no, then you should do it.
Carolina
You absolutely
is
should.
interested.
Okay, I know,
I
we're
can
working
just
our way,
We're working away, Okay.
Okay, Catalina, tell yours, what would you like to do?
Ladies.
I know.
Okay, I would love to be an alternate to the teacher leadership team. I am happy to look into the Golden Bell liaison, or be your alternate, Marina, if you don't want to do that.
No, you'll be the one.
Okay.
Let's clarify that.
I'm happy to be a backup for the Central Heads Up Foundation. Also the SR Chamber Education Subcommittee.
Okay, let me ask you, on the Heads Up Foundation, so Gina is interested in being an alternate, would you be willing to be the primary?
I think that's what he's
Primary, I'll be
trying
your
to
alternate.
say.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's all good.
Okay, so you're the primary.
And Gina's the backup?
Right,
Yeah.
I'll be the backup.
And then I'm happy to support Linda in the Marin County Efficiency and Effectiveness.
True. Linda wants on.
Great.
And then I'm happy to look into the Marin Promise Partnership.
That'd be awesome too.
Thank you, Carolina.
I'll see if I still have a life after that.
Yeah.
Did you say the Chamber Education Subcommittee?
Yeah, the Central Foundation.
Geez, you're on it.
Yeah, but yeah.
It's okay if you
We'll
don't
see,
make
yeah.
every meeting.
I know, if I don't make every meeting, I'll
Yeah.
let you know.
Okay, who wants to be the backup to Catalina on the Education Committee?
At 7:30 a.m.?
No, they meet at noon.
They meet at
Oh, the
noon.
San Rafael Chamber.
Tuesdays.
This is the San Rafael Chamber?
on the
Okay, I'll
second-
I'll be the backup.
You'll be the
Okay.
backup, okay, so you need an alternate.
I gave you guys an old list.
Yeah, we did.
Stop.
Newer list.
Stop.
Yeah.
We're working
We
off
get
of
it
this one.
Marina can do it.
As long as I can get everyone.
So I'm gonna start, okay, anybody else want to talk about what they're on?
So can you please repeat who's gonna be the alternate for the chamber?
Okay, I'm gonna start from the top and walk through.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna start from the top and walk through, so you all have this. So in the elementary district budget, that's me. I do not have an alternate, and it would be good to have an alternate. So I will put that out there for you to all think about. The high school budget is just Gina. Do we have an alternate there?
Linda, I'll be your backup to the elementary.
Okay. And I guess by that, I can be your backup. Well done, Gina.
Okay.
Okay. On the capital facilities, that's Gina as the lead and Lucia as the alternate.
Yes.
Okay. DLAC, that's Marina and Lucia. Superintendent Student Advisory Council, that's Lucia. Is there a backup there?
I'll be your backup.
Okay.
Real quick, did you move the meetings to Thursdays? Because we were meeting on Mondays every other Monday.
No, that's wrong. This is the one that I copied you is an old list.
Okay, perfect, okay. just
It's
fine.
actually Mondays, well, you know
Okay,
what
we
it
should
is.
correct
Well,
that
the
Well,
meeting with the kids is Monday, but then the student advisories are Wednesdays. which you-
Oh, okay, so we have to correct that, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, thank you.
Superintendent's Parent Advisory Council, that's me. I'm happy there, but an alternate would be good in case I can't make it. Catalina says yes.
I seemed.
You're gonna have to get off of the Little League boards and all the other things.
The little
Science.
bird is 3 months only.
Science Committee? Science Committee?
I'll try to do that.
Okay, Gina, is there anybody who'd be like to be an alternate on that one?
Science is a new one. We added the science.
Yes,
So science is new.
we'll give you an updated.
Yeah. You'll get a whole brand new one.
So science girl?
Okay,
Is you?
Gina, I'll be your backup on that one.
Linda is the other science girl?
And so what
Okay.
you need to do is hold on to this, but if you forget, I know Marina can track it down for us.
No, I'm not, yeah, this is.
Parcel Tax Committee, that's Gina. We need an alternate as well, or a second member on that one, do we? It's helpful, right?
Nice, yeah.
So this is different from the bond, yeah, because it's a parcel tax.
This is the oversight of the parcel
Oversight.
tax that we just passed. So it's the advisory group and we actually, they look very closely at all the expenditures that are being made, so.
And
We're really there in an advisory capacity, just hearing
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
I
comments.
know you're swamped. I do have, I can go. I went to the last one. And so if Gina, if you can't go, I'll be your alternate. Leadership team, that'll be myself and then Lucia and Carolina as alternates.
Yeah.
Um,
Sorry, before we move on to that one, what about the bond committee that I'm doing right now? This is a key initiative too, and it's not included.
Is that the
Because
facilities
it's
committee?
outside of the district.
So,
That's a separate.
The,
Yeah,
so it cannot, thank you.
it's not an official committee.
It's not in my official capacity, that's right. Thank you.
well, how do we want to note that?
Not in my official capacity.
It's an ad hoc committee, not on.
It's an ad hoc.
Okay, got it.
Thank you.
Okay, now we have our non-district committees. So the rep to the Marin County School Boards Association, that's Gina. The Golden Bell Liaison, that's Carolina. JLAC, that's Gina, and I'm gonna take my name off of that. The Liaison Committee, what is that?
That's where we do our quarterly meetings with the city, the
Oh,
county.
right,
and,
yeah. And we need to know when that is because we weren't notified.
Yeah, we're always left off of that.
So you haven't attended?
On
No,
the
we get
liaison
told at
committee,
the
do
last
find
minute
out
and we
when
don't
the
get
next
sent
one is,
agenda
because they
items.
forgot to tell us about the. Heads up, that's Carolina and Gina as the alternate. The San Rafael Chamber Education Committee is Carolina and Gina as the alternate. We're deleting the CalFresh.
Can you go back, the city county school district, that's at breakfast thing,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
That's like the quarterly breakfast.
Yeah, is
It's
that,
AM.
yeah,
No,
is
never
that,
mind.
is that still Linda and Gina?
Yes.
Yes,
You went last time though. because-
yes, but no,
For
But that's
Linda.
not-
that's because she couldn't make it.
Okay, yeah, my bad.
Safe Routes to School, that is Marina. And Bob is going to contact her and get her in touch with Wendy, so she's on the mailing list, email list. Efficiency and Effectiveness, that'll be Carolina and Jim. That's how much he likes that, so.
I love it.
And then the Marin Promise Partnership Council, that's Carolina. And so could somebody get Carolina in touch with the Marin Promise?
Yeah, we'll
leadership?
go through all these.
Yeah.
It might be helpful to get whatever the revised list is, send that to us, and then maybe we can take a look at it and say, yes, that is what we thought we agreed to as well. And then have all the meeting invitations, because I think that's the hardest thing is we don't always know when the meetings are.
Yeah.
and-
All right.
Thank you guys for
Okay,
joining these
so-
committees.
Yeah.
No, what time we can share.
Especially the ones that are not ours.
So much.
I can help you with some.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, and now we move on to the, for everybody who has hung with us this long, this is the fastest part. Approval of the consent calendar. We have items 1 through 14. Does anybody have something they would like to pull? Seeing none, is there somebody who'd like to make a motion?
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
Okay, moved by trustee Daly, seconded by trustee Palmer to approve items 1 through 14 on the consent agenda. All in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Nobody's opposed. Those all pass unanimously. Thank you so much to our staff for everything they've done. You all have a good evening. We will see you on March 28th. This meeting's